A streak of scarlet light soared into the sky, bringing with it a fearful sword radiance. It was like a bloody sun in the sky, illuminating the entire hall red. Within the blood-red light was a broadsword that was about 5 feet long and as wide as a palm. It was emitting a heavy and sacred pressure. This sword wasn't as dignified and divine as Chen Lan's golden sword. It was more like a sword of slaughter that could split the heavens and the earth apart. It was filled with an iron-blooded domineering aura and a might that looked down upon all living beings. If Chen Lan's work was described as a monarch's sword, then Jiang Tianyi's divine sword would be an overlord's sword. Without a doubt, this sword was also a top-grade low-grade king-grade god artifact. Jiang Tiansheng was the first to applaud. He shouted, "Did you see that? Seventh Brother's divine sword is even more powerful and domineering than yours. Your sword is a woman's sword. Seventh Brother's bloody slaughter divine sword is a real man's weapon." Chen Lan's expression didn't look too good as he glared at Jiang Tiansheng. Uncle Yen was silent and didn't comment. He was also someone who knew his stuff. Of course, he knew that both swords were top grade. It was hard to tell which was better. Lin Zhen frowned and didn't say anything. He had to admit that the bloody slaughter divine sword was very impressive. On the other hand, Zhan Longxiang's face was filled with excitement and admiration. His face was flushed red. He didn't say anything, but he was screaming in his heart, "What a peerless divine weapon! This is the sword that I've been dreaming of." The hall fell into a short period of silence. Chen Lan frowned and said, "Jiang Tianyi, everyone's eyes are clear. I'll be fair and objective and say that the bloody slaughter divine sword you refined is also a top-grade weapon. In terms of divine sword quality, you and I are tied. However, you were 15 minutes slower than me. That's the truth. Therefore, you still lost." Jiang Tianyi couldn't refute and could only silently put away the bloody slaughter divine sword and divine furnace. But Jiang Tiansheng was very unconvinced. He still wanted to quibble but didn't know what to say. The first round ended just like that. Chen Lan looked askance at Jiang Tianyi and said with a cold smile, "How is it? You're not convinced of your loss, right? Want another round? Anyway, it's decided in 3 rounds. You still have 2 chances." Chen Lan was very cunning. Although he had just refined an artifact and used up a lot of divine power. If they continued to compete, his speed would definitely decrease several times. However, Jiang Tianyi was the same as him. His strength and foundation were inferior to his, and his speed would be even slower. If they continued to compete in the second round, Jiang Tianyi would still lose to him. And he would lose even more miserably. Best of 3. If Jiang Tianyi lost 2 rounds in a row, he could scram with his tail between his legs. Everyone present understood Chen Lan's intentions. Jiang Tianyi naturally wasn't willing to take the bait. He said with a cold smile, "You'd better save it. Also, best of 3. You've only won 1 round. Don't be smug too early." Then, he ignored Chen Lan's mockery and walked toward Jiang Tiansheng and Ji Tianqing. Everyone thought that he would meditate for a while before competing with Chen Lan. However, to everyone's surprise, he walked straight to Ji Tianqing and bowed respectfully with a sincere expression. "Young Master Tianqing, I can only rely on you." Jiang Tianyi bowed very low with a sincere expression. Chen Lan, Uncle Yen, Lin Zhen, and Zhan Longxiang all looked at Ji Tianqing. Jiang Tiansheng was also surprised. He pulled Jiang Tianyi's sleeve and asked, "Seventh brother, you're not going to compete? You're letting him compete in your place. Can he do it?" Jiang Tianyi ignored him and maintained his bow. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly. He looked at Jiang Tianyi and asked, "Are you sure you want me to compete? Are you not going to compete?" Jiang Tianyi replied in a low and depressed tone, "I'm indeed not his match. After all, I'm 3,000 years younger than him and my cultivation is not as profound as his. Now, only you can secure the victory and force Qianlan to withdraw. Otherwise, the two blacksmithing geniuses will be taken away by the 100 smelting ancient sect. The Jiang clan will lose face. Ji Tianqing was silent for a moment, then nodded and said, "All right, I'll help you one more time for your sake. Get up." Jiang Tianyi stood up with a gratified smile. He said solemnly, "Thank you for your help, young master. I will never forget it." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and didn't say anything. He stood up and walked to the center of the hall. At this moment, Qianlan frowned and asked coldly, "Kid, who are you?" Uncle Yen also said expressionlessly, "An outsider has no right to interfere with the battle between our sect and the Jiang clan. Young man, if you don't reveal your identity, don't blame me for throwing you out of the Gold Laurel Palace." Chapter 34-74. Previously, Qianlan and Uncle Yen had suspected Ji Tianqing's identity. However, he kept a low profile and did not attract any attention. Hence, the two of them did not pay much attention to him. However, it was different now. Jiang Tianyi had lost the first round, but he wanted to invite Ji Tianqing to participate in the second round. Moreover, Jiang Tianyi was very respectful towards Ji Tianqing, as if he was facing an elder. However, there was no such young human among the elders, protectors, and leaders of the Jiang clan. How could Qianlan and Uncle Yen not be suspicious? Faced with the two's questioning, Jiang Tianyi frowned and hesitated whether to reveal Ji Tianqing's true identity. At this moment, Ji Tianqing looked at Uncle Yen with a smile and mocked, "Yen Shangao, it's been 1,000 years and you haven't improved at all. Oh right, is your illegitimate son still alive? Don't tell me you've decided to kill him for justice." He paused for a while and muttered to himself, "However, with your character, you'll probably kill your illegitimate son to protect yourself. After all, your wife is a direct descendant of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. If you want to hug the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect's thigh, you have to show your determination." Upon hearing this, Uncle Yen, who was still domineering just a moment ago, froze. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. His expression was extremely ugly. His eyes were wide open as he stared fixedly at Ji Tianqing. His eyes were filled with fear. "You. Who are you? Don't slander me and tarnish my reputation." Uncle Yen was shocked, but he still maintained his rationality and quickly denied it. However, his reaction had already betrayed him. Everyone knew that Ji Tianqing was right. Even Qianlan was stunned. She looked at Uncle Yen with a strange look in her eyes. Seeing Qianlan's reaction, Ji Tianqing ignored Uncle Yen and said to Qianlan, "Second brother Qian, it seems like you don't know Yen Shangao well. This old man used to be the guard commander of the treasury and was a person of high status. However, 1,000 years ago, the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect suddenly announced that he would be stripped of his position and demoted to your housekeeper and guard. Don't you understand what's going on? Maybe you're still feeling complacent and think that the sect thinks highly of you, so you did it on purpose, right?" Qianlan was at a loss for words. She wanted to retort, but she couldn't. Uncle Yan's expression turned even uglier. His eyes were as sharp as swords as he glared at Ji Tianqing. In a low voice, he asked, "Boy, who are you?" Ji Tianqing smiled contemptuously and said in an indifferent tone, "Yen Shangao, not to mention you, even if your sect leader Su Bai Lian was here, he wouldn't dare to be impudent in front of this king. There are 800 outer disciples, 200 inner disciples, 9 elite disciples, 12 elders, the left and right protectors, the sect leader, and the vice-sect leader. I know all of them like the back of my hand. Can you guess who this prince is? In terms of seniority, both of you should address this prince as old master." Qianlan and Uncle Yen were dumbfounded. They stared at him with their mouths agape. Their first reaction was disbelief. Not only was this human young man young, but he was also a nobody. How could he have such a high seniority? Qianlan and Uncle Yen were furious. They felt that the other party was bluffing and even humiliating them. However, both of them suppressed their anger and didn't dare to be impudent. After all, Ji Tianqing's tone was calm and confident. It was as if he was telling the truth. He wasn't pretending. Moreover, he knew the situation of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect very well. His words were clear and logical. He even dared to call the sect leader of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect by his name. In an instant, Qianlan and Uncle Yen were stunned. They couldn't tell if it was true or false. The two of them looked at each other and discussed secretly through voice transmission. Uncle Yen, can you guess who this boy is? Is there such a human young man among the seniors who have dealings with our sect? Qianlan. Don't be fooled by him. This boy is so young. How can he be a senior? Uncle Yen, to us divine king powerhouses, maintaining a youthful appearance isn't anything difficult. Moreover, there are many old monsters who have lived for tens of thousands of years who like to disguise themselves as handsome young men. This guy doesn't look like he's lying. If he really is a senior, won't we offend him? Qianlan was obviously stunned and didn't dare to act rashly. However, Uncle Yen shook his head secretly and objected. I feel that the probability of this is not high. What if he's pretending and we're still fooled? Won't that be embarrassing? Qianlan frowned and said in a low voice, Uncle Yen, he knows the situation of our sect like the back of his hand. Also, what he said about you just now, is it true? Uncle Yan's expression was very awkward. He turned his head and said, Young Master Lan, can we not talk about this? Qianlan spread out his hands and said, then it's true. Since that's the case, we'd rather believe it's true than not. Anyway, we're only competing with him in weapon refinement. We won't fight to the death. No matter if he's real or fake, we won't lose anything if we don't harp on this question. Uncle Yen remained silent, which was a tacit agreement. At this time, Ji Tianqing looked at Qianlan with a smile that didn't look like a smile. He asked, are the two of you done muttering? Who still has objections to my identity? Uncle Yen remained silent and glared at him angrily. Qianlan wanted to ask who Ji Tianqing was, but Ji Tianqing's words made his body tense up and his hair stand on end. 1,125 years ago, 3 disciples of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect entered the mysterious Nether Cave to explore. You were one of them, right? 2 of them died, and only you came out alive. Have you found out the cause of their deaths? Although Ji Tianqing seemed to be asking casually, a cold smile appeared on his face. However, there was a cold smile on his lips as he stared at Qianlan with a meaningful look in his eyes. That deep and cold gaze seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. Qianlan's heart clenched and cold sweat broke out on his back. Even his expression was a little stiff. Others didn't know the truth, but he was well aware. He was the one who caused the death of one of the disciples. In order to cover up the truth, he killed the other disciple. After escaping the mysterious Nether Cave, he lied that the 2 disciples were attacked by ferocious beasts and that he had risked his life to escape. The 100 Refinement Ancient Sect investigated for a period of time, but nothing was found. Everyone had forgotten about this matter, and Qianlan had also thrown it to the back of his mind. Now that Ji Tianqing mentioned it, it seemed like he was reminding him of something. Qianlan immediately became vigilant and fearful. He was afraid that he would expose himself, so he quickly smiled and said, Young Master Tianqing, you must be joking. The sect has already investigated this matter. Ji Tianqing didn't pursue the matter. He smiled and said, can we start the second round now? Qianlan secretly sighed in relief and quickly nodded. Yes. Of course. Ji Tianqing looked at him from the corner of his eyes and sneered. You seem to be very guilty. Could it be that paper can't wrap fire and you've exposed yourself? Qianlan's nerves, which had just relaxed, instantly tensed up again. Her heart thumped. When he saw Uncle Yan's doubtful and scrutinizing gaze, his mind went blank. He stopped breathing and his limbs turned cold. Chapter 34-75. At that moment, Qianlan was truly scared out of his wits. The rules of the 100 Refinements ancient sect were very strict. Once the sect found out that he had harmed a fellow disciple, only death awaited him. Furthermore, the disciples of the sect could expose each other. For example, if Uncle Yen exposed this matter to the sect, he would be rewarded greatly. Perhaps his punishment would be revoked, and he would be able to return to guard the treasury and be the leader of the guards. That was why Qianlan was so terrified. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and smiled. "I was just joking with you. Look at how scared you are." Only then did Qianlan feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Her suspended heart finally settled back into her stomach, and her soul that had flown out of the heavens returned to her body. He forced an ugly smile on his pale face and said in a hoarse voice, "Young Master Tianqing, you can't joke about this. It'll kill someone." Uncle Yen retracted his suspicious gaze and remained silent. Ji Tianqing sat down cross-legged and took out the 9 heavens cauldron. "All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's start the competition. Which one of you will fight?" Qianlan secretly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and pointed at Uncle Yen. "He will fight. I need to rest for a few days. He will fight this round." Uncle Yen was prepared for this, so he wasn't surprised. However, he frowned and looked at Qianlan. "Young Master Lan, I'm not a direct disciple of the sect. My skills in refining weapons are very ordinary. I can't compare to you. This guy's background is mysterious, so his skills must be extraordinary. His skills in refining weapons must be superb. If I fight him, I'll most likely lose." Qianlan didn't panic and replied calmly, "Uncle Yen, don't worry. This is just a temporary measure. Don't forget, we'll win 2 out of 3 rounds. I've already won 1 round, so it's fine even if you lose to him. In the 3rd round, it'll still be me versus Jiang Tianyi. They'll definitely lose." Uncle Yen was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He nodded in agreement. "That's right. This guy needs to rest after the competition. Jiang Tianyi will fight the 3rd round." Thinking of this, he calmed down and no longer felt pressured. "All right, I'll fight you in the 2nd round." Uncle Yen regained his dignified aura and walked to the center of the hall. He was 100 meters away from Ji Tianqing. He took out a king-level divine cauldron and sat cross-legged on the ground. "Young Master Tianqing, you think too highly of yourself. You even consider yourself our senior. Then this old man would like to see if your attainments and strength in refining artifacts are as big as your words." Ji Tianqing looked at him with a smile and said lightly, "You're just cannon fodder. Don't give yourself more drama." Uncle Yan's face turned red, but he couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing both held their stomachs and laughed out loud. Even Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang smiled. The atmosphere in the main hall was finally not so oppressive anymore. Soon, the competition between Ji Tianqing and Uncle Yen began. The 2 of them activated the array formation in the divine cauldron and began to adjust the divine flames and the temperature in the cauldron to prepare for the refinement. An hour later, the preparations were complete. The 2 of them took out the materials and added them into the cauldron. The competition was still about refining a king-level low-grade divine artifact. Uncle Yen took out 10 sets of materials to refine a divine sword. Ji Tianqing took out 8 sets of materials to refine a divine armor. Qianlan, Jiang Tianqing, and the others were shocked and they saw the materials used by the 2 of them. They were filled with doubt. That's a king-level low-grade divine artifact. He needs at least 9 sets of materials to succeed. He only used 8 sets. Even Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang looked at Ji Tianqing in a different light. They were looking forward to it. He wants to refine a king-level divine artifact with only 8 sets of materials. It seems like this Jianqing has a special refining technique that's better than Qianlan and Jiang Tianyi's. Out of everyone present, only Jiang Tianyi had a smile on his face. He was already used to it. After that, Ji Tianqing and Uncle Yen both focused on casting their spells and forging tools. Uncle Yen gave it his all. He was especially serious and focused. His nerves were tense. Although he was cannon fodder, Qianlan expected him to lose. But he wanted to prove himself and give it his all. If he beat Ji Tianqing, not only would he be proud, but he would also win the competition and force the Jiang clan out of the competition. Then he would have made a contribution. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing's expression was calm and indifferent. There was a sense of leisure in his concentration. It was as if he wasn't refining artifacts, completing a mission, or competing with others. It was as if he was drinking tea, admiring the moon, and appreciating paintings. His mental state was relaxed. But his hand movements were as smooth as flowing water. It was too fast for the eyes to take in, and it was accurate. He used different methods in the early, middle, and late stages of refining the divine armor. They were all refining techniques that no one had ever heard of before. They were mysterious and profound. Qianlan, Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tianxing, Lin Zhen, and Zhan Longxiang stared at him. Their eyes were filled with amazement and admiration. Especially Zhan Longxiang. His eyes were burning, and his heart was filled with adoration. Time passed quickly, and no one noticed. Unknowingly, 7 days had passed. Ji Tianqing finally finished his refinement and stopped his work. His expression was still calm, and there wasn't even a bead of sweat on his forehead. He looked especially relaxed. After he finished refining, he didn't say anything. He just sat on the spot and closed his eyes, waiting silently. The ninth heaven cauldron that was spinning quickly also stopped. It floated motionlessly. Seeing him do that, Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tianxing, Lin Zhen, and Zhan Longxiang all looked at Qianlan. Qianlan was embarrassed. He was too ashamed to show his face. After all, he was very proud of himself after refining the artifact. He even mocked and harassed Jiang Tianyi. Compared to Ji Tianqing's actions, he was a despicable person. Ji Tianqing had the demeanor of a grandmaster and the bearing of a divine blacksmith. Embarrassed by everyone's gazes, Qianlan could only change the topic. He pursed his lips and said, "So what if his refining techniques are fancy? Didn't he use 7 days just like me? Even if he were to compete with me, we would only be able to tie." No one said anything. They couldn't refute him. After that, the crowd waited for another 12 hours before Uncle Yen finally completed the refinement. Phew, after he stopped, Uncle Yen let out a sigh of relief. He wiped the sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. His face was a little pale, and he looked a little tired. He said to Qianlan, "Young Master Lan, I didn't let you down. I've finished refining." Qianlan forced a smile. "Uncle Yen, you've worked hard." However, young Master Tianqing finished refining 12 hours ago. Uncle Yen was stunned. He said dejectedly, "I didn't expect that I would still lose after giving it my all." Qianlan hurriedly comforted him. "Don't worry. Let's wait until everyone sees your work. Perhaps your artifact will be more exquisite than his." Uncle Yen nodded and opened the cauldron lid. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 3476. Swoosh. The lid of the cauldron opened, and a white rainbow flew into the air. A 4-foot-long sword was wrapped in the dazzling white rainbow. The sword was blazing white and had a dignified appearance. It rippled with a vigorous divine power aura. It contained 100 types of divine Tao laws and 1,000 types of divine formations and restrictions. Compared to Qianlan and Jiang Tianyi's works, this sword could only be considered average and not outstanding. Qianlan was a little disappointed. He had already guessed the outcome. However, he still had a trace of hope and hope. He looked at Ji Tianqing and said, "Young Master Tianqing, it's your turn." Ji Tianqing did not waste any time. He waved his hand and opened the lid of the nine heavens cauldron. Swoosh! A dazzling icy blue divine light bloomed from the cauldron and slowly rose into the air. The entire hall was illuminated with an icy blue color. It was like a palace of ice and snow. Following the appearance of an exquisite and gorgeous divine armor, the entire hall turned into a hall of extreme cold. Frost formed everywhere. Everyone ignored the bone-piercing cold. They stared at the icy blue armor and observed it carefully. This divine armor is too beautiful. This should be, for a woman to wear, right? Jiang Tianxing exclaimed from the bottom of his heart. It's so exquisite and gorgeous. The patterns on the armor are also original. It's really admirable. Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang were excited. Their expressions were filled with admiration and worship. Even Qianlan had to admit that this divine armor was indeed a divine item. It was a 1 in 1,000 masterpiece. Jiang Tianyi observed it carefully for a while before saying, "It's really a low-grade king-grade divine artifact. And it's a supreme-grade one. Whether it's the difficulty of refining or the quality, it far surpasses the bloody slaughter sword that I refined and the sword that Qianlan refined." Jiang Tianyi was sincerely impressed. However, before he could finish, Qianlan said indignantly, "I don't deny that it surpasses your bloody slaughter sword. However, it surpasses my divine sword." "Are you sure?" Jiang Tianyi turned to look at him and nodded expressionlessly. "I'm very sure. First of all, refining an armor is more complicated and time-consuming than a divine sword. Secondly, young Master Tianqing only used 8 sets of materials. You used 9 sets. This is enough to prove that young Master Tianqing's attainments in refining artifacts are superior to yours. Most importantly, take a closer look at this divine armor. How many laws and restrictions does it contain?" Qianlan was stunned. She looked at the ice-blue divine armor again and observed it carefully. After a short moment, his figure shook while his expression stiffened, and he couldn't help but exclaim with shock. 130 divine crests of the laws. More than 1,300 restrictions. Oh my God! It's only been 7 days, how could he? Qianlan was completely dumbfounded. He was so shocked that his blood was boiling and his entire body was burning. At this moment, winning or losing was no longer important. He just wanted to know how Ji Tianqing did it. Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang were also stunned. They looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of respect and admiration. The hall fell into silence. Uncle Yen put away the divine cauldron and divine sword. He broke the silence and said in a low voice, "We have lost the second round." His words woke everyone up. Only then did Qianlan come back to his senses. He regained his confidence and composure and grinned. Even if young Master Tianqing won, it's nothing. It's all within my expectations anyway. Now that we are tied, we have to wait for the third round to determine the winner." With that said, Qianlan looked at Jiang Tianyi provocatively and curled his finger. "Jiang Tianyi, my divine power and condition have both recovered to their peak. You can admit defeat in advance." Jiang Tianyi immediately frowned, and his expression became serious. "That's right. So what if Ji Tianqing won the first round? He still had to go up for the third round and have a final battle with Qianlan. He had only recovered 90% and was not at his peak condition. It was very, very difficult to win against Qianlan." Jiang Tianyi was originally very happy, but when he thought of this problem, he became depressed. Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang also looked at Jiang Tianyi, waiting for him to make a decision. Should he compete with Qianlan and lose? Or should he save his energy and time and admit defeat directly? Just as everyone was waiting for Jiang Tianyi to make a decision, a calm voice sounded. The third round will still be mine. Everyone was stunned for a moment and turned their heads. Without a doubt, the person who spoke was Ji Tianqing. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianyi both frowned and asked worriedly, "Young Master Tianqing, aren't you going to rest for a few days?" Although the two of them said the same thing, their thoughts were different. Jiang Tianyi was worried that Ji Tianqing's continuous forging of divine weapons would damage his foundation of the divine path. Jiang Tianyi, on the other hand, was worried that Ji Tianqing would lose to Qianlan due to his lack of strength in the third round. Qianlan raised his eyebrows and asked with a playful smile, "Young Master Tianqing, your forging skills are indeed extraordinary. However, you have just finished forging a divine weapon. Are you sure you want to continue? Don't say that I took advantage of you by not letting you rest and recuperate. You asked for it yourself." Clearly, Qianlan was not worried about losing at all. If Jiang Tianyi participated in the third round, he would definitely lose. If Ji Tianqing continued, he would not have much chance of winning in a situation where he did not have enough divine power and was mentally exhausted. No matter what, Qianlan was sure to win. Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said indifferently, "It's only been 7 days. I didn't use much divine power. Do I still need to rest and recuperate?" Qianlan choked on her words and said in exasperation, "Fine. Since you are so confident, let's wait and see." Jiang Tianyi wanted to persuade Ji Tianqing but was stopped by Jiang Tianyi. He transmitted his voice to Jiang Tianyi, "Ninth brother, young Master Tianqing's strength and methods are far beyond our imagination. Since he is so confident, we will definitely win." Jiang Tianyi was skeptical. After hesitating for a long time, he finally acquiesced. On the other side, Uncle Yen reminded Qianlan, "Young Master Lan, that kid's forging skills are so shocking. You must not let your guard down." Qianlan nodded to show that he understood and said with a smile, "If I had competed with him just now, I would definitely have lost. His forging skills are indeed brilliant. However, he has just finished forging a divine weapon. His divine power must be empty and his mind exhausted. I, on the other hand, am in peak condition. Why should I be afraid of losing to him?" Uncle Yen was speechless. He could only remind him, "In any case, young Master Lan, you must give it your all." "All right, I understand." Qianlan waved his hand and walked to the main hall to sit down. He took out the divine cauldron and looked at Ji Tianqing opposite him. "Shall we begin?" Ji Tianqing raised his hand and said, "Wait. This third round will determine the winner. If we compete like this, it will be too monotonous." Qianlan frowned. "What? You know that your divine power is insufficient and want to change the rules?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "It's boring to just forge a low-grade king-level divine weapon. Why don't we upgrade the divine weapon we just forged to mid-grade?" "Upgrade a low-grade divine weapon?" Qianlan frowned and pondered seriously. After weighing the pros and cons, he gritted his teeth and made a decision. "Fine." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Why don't we add some stakes? Otherwise, it will be boring for everyone to watch." Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3477. Ji Tianqing's words made Qianlan fall silent. Uncle Yen was filled with anxiety. He hurriedly sent a voice transmission to remind him. "Young Master Lan, be careful of that guy's tricks. Both are low-grade king-grade divine artifacts, but the divine armor he made has 30 more runes than your divine sword. If the two of you compete like this, he can save nearly a day of time compared to you. Moreover, you haven't made many mid-grade king-grade divine artifacts. I'm afraid you don't have enough experience." Before Uncle Yen could finish, Qianlan waved his hand and interrupted him. "Uncle Yen, not only have I helped my master and a few elders to make mid-grade king-grade divine artifacts 7 times, but I've also made them 3 times. I've also made them 3 times, and all of them were successful. If we're talking about experience, I'm quite confident. However, his divine armor has 130 runes, so it can save a lot of time. Seeing that he had listened to his advice, Uncle Yen didn't say anything else. Qianlong looked at Ji Tianqing and asked, "What do you want to bet with me?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Of course I want to bet some valuables, such as precious treasures or divine artifacts." "Do you dare?" Qianlong sneered and said, "Why wouldn't I dare? Tell me, what treasures do you want to bet?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Your master is the left protector of the 100 Refinements ancient sect. I remember that he found a great opportunity on a star when he was exploring the universe. He dug up a huge piece of primordial jade essence, which is a treasure that has been growing for 100,000 years. Not only can it be used to heal injuries, forge weapons, and refine pills, but it can also be refined to increase one's strength. He seems to have divided the primordial jade essence into a few portions. He gave one to the 100 Refinements ancient sect, refined one for himself, and kept a few for himself. If I'm not wrong, you're the disciple he's most proud of, so he should have given you a portion, right?" Hearing this, Qianlong was instantly on guard, and his eyes were filled with caution. "How do you know all this? You're actually thinking about Master's primordial jade essence?" Qianlong exclaimed. This matter was extremely secretive. Even within the 100 Refinements ancient sect, not many people knew about it. 200 years ago, Qianlong had made a great contribution and brought glory to his master. That was why his master had secretly rewarded him with a primordial jade marrow. From then on, he learned of the origin and effects of the primordial chalcedony. It grew in the depths of the earth's core. Even though it was nurtured within a divine jade mine, it was like fine nectar that could be directly consumed and refined. After obtaining the primordial chalcedony, Qianlong had wanted to refine it to increase her cultivation. However, the left protector had repeatedly warned him that he had to wait until he reached the peak of the 6th degree realm and break through the shackles of the high-level divine king before using it. This way, he would have even greater hopes of becoming a high divine king. That was why Qianlong had kept the primordial jade quintessence all this while and had not refined it yet. However, he did not expect that Ji Tianqing would actually guess that he had this item and even wanted to use it as a wager. Without any hesitation, Qianlong rejected him decisively. "No. I will never use it as a wager. Don't even think about it." With regards to his reaction, Ji Tianqing was not surprised at all. He merely smiled and said, "Why? The competition hasn't even started and you already think that you will lose? If that's the case, you might as well admit defeat and leave Chang'e City." "How can I admit defeat?" Of course, Qianlong was not convinced, but he would not be provoked. "However, I will not use the primordial chalcedony as a wager. You can give up now." Is that so?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said in a playful tone, "Since you want to bet, of course it has to be fair. My wager is as valuable as the primordial chalcedony. Don't you want to know what it is? What else can be as valuable as the primordial chalcedony?" Qianlong naturally did not believe him. He frowned and stared at Ji Tianqing. Uncle Yen also revealed a curious and doubtful expression as he waited for Ji Tianqing's reply. Ji Tianqing looked at the two of them and said with a playful smile, "The 100 Smelting Ancient Sect was founded more than 37,000 years ago by a peerless divine blacksmith, Lian Qinqiu. At that time, Lian Qinqiu was only obsessed with researching and crafting divine weapons. He did not have time to care about worldly affairs. In order to craft a peerless divine weapon, he spent thousands of years of effort and traveled across the universe. He searched every corner of the divine world and almost died. He was a true blacksmithing maniac and a lunatic for researching divine weapons. Fortunately, he had 4 successful disciples who used his name to create the 100 Smelting Ancient Sect. After 3,000 years of development, the sect occupied a paradise and transcended the worldly affairs. It was with the power of the sect that Lien Qianxiu was able to gather the two sets of materials that he desperately needed. In the end, he successfully crafted a king-grade divine weapon, the 100-smelting divine hammer. Uncle Yen and Chen Lan were not unfamiliar with the legend of the 100-smelting ancient sect's founding ancestor. However, after listening to Ji Tianqing's story, the two of them were not annoyed. Instead, they were filled with pride. However, when they heard the words 100-smelting divine hammer, their expressions turned cold and their eyes dimmed. Ji Tianqing continued, although Lien Qianxiu did not change his ways of being a blacksmith maniac and went to the universe to search for special materials, unfortunately, he died in a black hole. However, the 100-smelting divine hammer is indeed a peerless divine weapon. It has protected the 100-smelting ancient sect for more than 30,000 years. It's a pity that the 100-smelting divine hammer was destroyed during the War of the Gods 1,000 years ago. It turned into dust and scattered in the void. Until now, the 100-smelting ancient sect has not been able to craft a similar divine hammer. This should be the 100-smelting ancient sect's greatest wish, right? Chen Lan and Uncle Yen both furrowed their brows and nodded with solemn and serious expressions. You're right. This is indeed our sect's greatest regret. What are you trying to say? Don't tell us that you can craft a 100-smelting divine hammer. That would be a joke. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, although I can craft a 100-smelting divine hammer, I don't have the time to spend thousands of years searching for materials. Uncle Yen and Chen Lan could tell that something was amiss. Their expressions changed and their hearts jumped to their throats. What do you mean? You can craft a 100-smelting divine hammer? That's impossible. Ji Tianqing said calmly, if I'm not wrong, the 100-smelting ancient sect has prepared all the materials to craft a divine hammer. Unfortunately, the only thing you lack is the blueprint of the divine hammer. The 100-smelting divine hammer is extremely complicated and exquisite. None of you can see through it and no one can remember it. Naturally, you won't be able to craft it. After saying that, Ji Tianqing circulated his divine force and a ball of golden light the size of an egg flew out from his forehead. The dense golden light contained a vast amount of information. It was mysterious and profound. Ji Tianqing held the golden light in his hand and looked at Chen Lan with a smile. He said, coincidentally, I know the blueprint of the 100-smelting divine hammer. Chen Lan, which one is more precious, the blueprint of the 100-smelting divine hammer or your primordial jade essence? Hearing this, Chen Lan was so excited that his blood boiled. He stared at the golden light with a burning gaze and could not help but swallow his saliva. Is there a need to ask? Even 10 primordial jade essences cannot compare to the blueprint of the 100-smelting divine hammer. It was as if he had fallen asleep and almost lost consciousness. After a long time, he finally calmed his mind and no longer dared to read the information in the light ball. Huff, 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 Chen Lan held the ball of light in her hand as she panted heavily. Her face was somewhat pale. It's too scary. Who would remember such a vast amount of information? I only saw about 10% of it and my mind almost fainted. It's too scary. Seeing that Chen Lan couldn't help but exclaim, Uncle Yen looked expectant and eager to try. Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tiansheng, Lin Zhen, Zhan Longxiang, and the others were also very interested. They were all shocked and expectant. They were all grandmasters and divine blacksmiths. They also wanted to see how mysterious and terrifying the blueprint of a peerless divine weapon was. Soon, Uncle Yen took the golden ball of light and immersed himself in it. When he took it, his reaction was even worse than Chen Lan's. After only 10 breaths, he felt dizzy and lost control of his mind. As if drunk, he stumbled and fell in the main hall. This is unbelievable. He quickly got up from the ground and exclaimed excitedly, this is no ordinary divine weapon. It must be a peerless divine weapon. Although I only saw less than 10% of it, I dare say that only a top divine blacksmith can create such a divine weapon. At this moment, Uncle Yan's doubts were dispelled. He was completely convinced by the blueprint of the 100 smelting divine hammer. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and took the golden ball of light back into his hand. Qianlan and Uncle Yan stared at the ball of light with reluctance. They really wanted to snatch it back. Ji Tianqing kept the golden ball of light and asked, "You've seen the blueprint. Qianlan, do you want to bet or not?" This time, Uncle Yan didn't have to say anything. Qianlan nodded without hesitation. Yes. Only a fool wouldn't bet. Although the primordial jade marrow was precious, it wasn't as important as the blueprint of the 100 smelting divine hammer. Qianlan was already fantasizing that if he won the blueprint, he would become a hero of the 100 smelting ancient sect. At that time, he would definitely become the chief disciple. It was even possible that he would inherit the position of the sect leader in the future. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. His face turned red. Uncle Yan didn't forget to remind him, "Young Master Lan, don't forget the time." Qianlan immediately sobered up. He regained his composure and said to Ji Tianqing, "Young Master Tianqing, I agree to bet with you. However, to be fair, I have a request. Your divine armor already has 130 laws. My divine sword only has 100. Therefore, I want to start the refinement. You have to wait a day before you can continue. If you agree, we can start now." Jiang Tianqing and Jiang Tianyi were filled with indignation. They immediately retorted. "Qianlan, can you be any more shameless? Young Master Tianqing can inscribe 130 laws. That's his ability. Young Master Tianqing has already competed once. Now, you want to continue the competition. You want to lead by a day. How dare you say that?" Qianlan also felt that he was going overboard. He wanted to change the time to 20 hours. However, before he could say anything, Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. "All right, the rules are set then." "Good." Qianlan was overjoyed. He quickly flattered, "Young Master Tianqing is indeed straightforward. You have the demeanor of a master." Since Ji Tianqing had agreed, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianyi had nothing to say. They could only shut their mouths. The two of them were filled with worry. They could only pray silently, hoping that Ji Tianqing would win. Soon, the competition began. Qianlan was the first to open the divine cauldron. He placed the golden divine sword that he had previously refined into the cauldron and prepared to inscribe laws and restrictions. Ji Tianqing sat in the main hall with his eyes closed. He waited patiently. An hour later, Qianlan's divine sword had melted into a sword embryo. It was in a moldable state. He began to inscribe laws and restrictions. 2 hours later, he had inscribed a law and stacked over 100 divine arrays and restrictions. As time passed, he focused on casting the arts. He kept inscribing law and restriction after law. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing became even more anxious when they saw that he was progressing rapidly. However, Ji Tianqing kept his eyes closed. He did not look at Qianlan at all. He seemed especially calm. Chapter 3479. Unknowingly, a day passed. Ji Tianqing followed the agreement and opened his eyes. He took out the 9 heavens divine cauldron and started refining. At this time, Qianlan had already engraved 27 laws and 270 array formations on his divine sword. Although compared to Ji Tianqing's divine armor, he was still short of 3 laws and 30 array formations. But he was filled with confidence and anticipation and did not feel worried at all. When Ji Tianqing started refining, he delayed for a breath of time and secretly took a look at Ji Tianqing. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing was as calm and indifferent as ever. He could not see through him at all. Chen thought to himself, this guy is still pretending to be deep. I still can't see through him. Ha ha ha, but no matter how well you pretend, it's useless. You'll be exposed very soon. Previously, you refined continuously for 7 days and only rested for a day in between. There's no way you can maintain your peak state. Next, we still have to engrave more than 170 laws. It'll take at least half a month's time. Let's see how you can persevere. These thoughts flashed through his mind. Chen was no longer distracted and continued to focus on refining. The hall fell into silence. Ji Tianqing and Chen were both immersed in refining without any distractions. Uncle Yan, Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tiansheng, Lin Zhen, and Zhanlong Xiang were all watching intently. No one made a sound, afraid that they would disturb Ji Tianqing and Chen. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing and Chen were the two divine blacksmiths with the highest attainments in refining among them. In this competition, the two of them also gave it their all and brought out their trump cards. Everyone watched intently. While they were filled with amazement and admiration, they also broadened their horizons and learned a lot of experience in refining. Especially Lin Zhen and Zhanlong Xiang, their hearts were filled with agitation and excitement. To be able to watch two divine blacksmiths compete at close range was something that the two of them yearned for even in their dreams. Unknowingly, 3 days passed. Ji Tianqing and Chen were still focused on refining and did not slack off at all. But the further they went, the harder it was to refine. The speed also became slower. Chen had engraved 184 laws and over 1,800 formation restrictions on the divine sword. This speed was already his limit, surpassing all his previous refinements. He was confident and proud. He couldn't help but glance at Ji Tianqing. He had thought that Ji Tianqing would definitely look tired and slow down his speed. But he was disappointed. Ji Tianqing was as calm as ever, without the slightest tiredness or sleepiness. His refining speed was as fast as ever. Of course. Only Ji Tianqing himself knew that the Frost Moon divine armor he was refining already had 196 nomological laws. That's right, this godly armor was called Frozen Moon. A long time ago, he had planned to forge 2 divine swords and a set of divine armor for Yunyao. The dual swords of Sun and Moon had been completed a long time ago. He was going to take this opportunity to refine the Ice Moon divine armor. Unknowingly, 12 days had passed. Chen refining work was finally coming to an end. He had already engraved 290 nomological laws and 2,900 formation restrictions on the divine sword. In at most another 20 hours, the divine sword would become a mid-grade king-grade divine artifact. Such a fast speed was something Chen had never thought of in the past. Unknowingly, he had already surpassed him. His refining attainments had improved again. He was proud and self-satisfied. He couldn't help but look at Ji Tianqing opposite him. However, when he saw Ji Tianqing across from him, he was dumbfounded on the spot and was stunned. Because, Ji Tianqing had just stopped and was casting spells. He raised his head and looked at him. Their eyes met. Ji Tianqing's expression was calm and indifferent. There was a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. But Chen seemed to have been struck by lightning. His body stiffened and his mind went blank. He actually already, completed it. At this moment, Chen heart was in a mess. He felt that everything was unreal. He couldn't believe it, much less accept it. Ji Tianqing had actually completed refining a mid-grade king-grade divine artifact. This couldn't be real. A deep sense of defeat filled Chen mind, causing his face to turn ashen. The confidence and pride that he was brimming with earlier vanished instantly, turning into disappointment and dejection. Right then, Uncle Yan reminded him with a voice transmission, "Young Master Lan, don't be in a daze. Continue casting your spells. Otherwise, the array formation will be messed up and the divine sword will collapse. Only then did Qianlan snap out of his daze. He hurriedly suppressed his distracting thoughts and calmed himself down before continuing to refine his weapon. He muttered internally, I haven't lost yet. I can't be distracted. No matter what, I have to refine this divine sword. Even if I lose to him, I can't embarrass myself, and I can't embarrass the sect. With that belief, Qianlan entered a focused state and continued to refine his weapon without any distractions. Everyone in the hall had already seen the outcome and knew the answer. However, no one disturbed Qianlan. They waited patiently for him to finish refining his weapon. Time seemed to have slowed down. After another 24 hours, Qianlan was finally done with her artifact forging. His divine sword was successfully engraved with 300 nomological runes and 3,000 array formations. However, when he finished refining his weapon and stopped, there was only a sigh of relief. There was no joy at all. It's over. He muttered to himself and raised his head to look at Ji Tianqing, who was in front of him. Ji Tianqing, who had been resting with his eyes closed, finally opened his eyes and said calmly. Although the outcome is already decided, we still have to show off our results, right? Qianlan was depressed. He nodded stiffly and waved his hand to open the cauldron lid. Swoosh! Golden light flashed. The golden divine sword flew into the air and floated quietly, shining with dazzling divine light. The appearance of the divine sword did not change much. It was just that its divine power aura was sharper and more sacred. The number of nomological runes and restrictions within it had also tripled. It had successfully become a medium-grade king-level divine weapon. At that moment, Ji Tianqing also opened the cauldron lid. Swoosh! Ice-blue divine light flashed and a bone-chilling cold spread, freezing the entire hall once again. The ice moon divine armor flew into the air and floated quietly, shining with dazzling light. Compared to Qianlan's divine sword, this divine armor was more beautiful, exquisite, and dazzling. Moreover, the divine armor structure was more complicated. Its defense was stronger and it had all sorts of functions. Most importantly, the number of nomological laws contained within the armor was as many as 303. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing had held back again. Not only did he spend 1 day less than Qianlan, but he also engraved 3 more nomological runes. A complete victory. A complete victory without any suspense. At that moment, Jiang Tianqing and Jiang Tianyi were cheering excitedly and clapping excitedly. Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang were also impressed. They clapped and cheered as they looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes full of respect and admiration. As for Qianlan and Uncle Yan, their expressions were ugly and gloomy. They had lost the competition. Not only did they have to withdraw from the competition, but they also had to give up on the 2 blacksmithing geniuses. What made Qianlan feel even more pained was that the primordial jade marrow that he had been saving to break through to an upper-level god king was about to change owners. Chapter 3480. Qianlan had nothing to say about the results of the competition. Even though he had defeated Jiang Tianyi in the first round. However, after Ji Tianqing joined the battle, he won both battles. Everyone had seen the competition with their own eyes, and they were full of admiration for Ji Tianqing's skills. Qianlan had lost to Ji Tianqing, but he accepted it wholeheartedly and did not feel embarrassed. He could feel that the gap between him and Ji Tianqing was huge. However, this did not mean that he could accept the results. The blueprint of the 100 smelting divine hammer was extremely precious, and he and Uncle Yan had seen it with their own eyes. However, he regretted it now and hated that he had been blinded by the temptation. Only now did he understand why Ji Tianqing had used the blueprint, which was 10 times more precious than the primordial jade essence, as a bet. He was confident that he would win. From the start, he had fallen into Ji Tianqing's trap. However, the bait was too tempting, and he and Uncle Yen had no choice but to take the bait. When he thought about how the primordial jade essence, which was like his second life, was going to be given to Ji Tianqing, his heart ached and his breathing became hot. Soon, the hall regained its silence. Ji Tianqing also kept the 9 heavens cauldron and ice moon divine armor, and looked at Qianlan calmly. Without waiting for Ji Tianqing to speak, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing said impatiently, "Qianlan, our Jiang clan has won this competition. You have to withdraw from the competition between the 2 blacksmithing geniuses. Also, you have to accept your loss. Qianlan, it's time for you to honor your bet." Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing's voices were filled with excitement and pride, and they looked at Qianlan with sympathy. Qianlan was ashamed and angry, but he could only endure it. With so many people watching, he could not go back on his words. After taking a deep breath and calming himself down, Qianlan said expressionlessly, "I have lost. According to the agreement, I will leave Perpetual Joy City today. Furthermore, I will not take the initiative to invite the 2 blacksmithing geniuses to join the 100 Smelting Ancient sect. However, those 2 geniuses are not willing to join the same sect, so you can only accept one at most. Do you think you have one?" Ha ha ha. Naive. Hearing Qianlan's words, the smiles on Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing's faces froze. That's right. Although Qianlan wanted to withdraw from the competition, the Jiang clan could only recruit 1 artificer. It was very likely that the other genius would take the initiative to join the 100 Refinement Ancient sect. Qianlan had only promised that she would not take the initiative to recruit any of them, but she had not promised to reject any of them. In the end, the 100 Refinements Ancient sect still got the upper hand. Thinking of this, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing's excitement instantly vanished. Seeing the 2 of them deflated and depressed, Qianlan revealed a smug sneer. He then turned to Ji Tianqing, cupped his fists and saluted, "Young Master Tianqing, this king admires your attainments and skills in refining artifacts, and I accept my defeat wholeheartedly. However, the primordial chalcedony was too precious, so I didn't carry it with me. I've always left it in the sect. How about this, I'll go back to the sect and get it for you now." Qianlan lowered her head slightly, observing Ji Tianqing's reaction as she spoke. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Jiang Tianqing's face was filled with anger as he shouted, "Qianlan, are you trying to renege on your debt? This place is so far away from the 100 Refinements Ancient sect, are you trying to buy time?" Qianlan quickly waved his hands and smiled, "You misunderstood. This king is upright, so how can I renege on my debt? If young Master Tianqing doesn't believe me, then follow me back to the sect to get it." Jiang Tianyi was also very dissatisfied, and he said coldly, "Qianlan, don't play these tricks. Do you think we can't see through your thoughts?" Ha ha ha. Qianlan sneered with disdain and shrugged helplessly, "You're measuring the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure. If you don't believe me, then there's nothing I can do." Uncle Yen also quickly chimed in and said righteously, "Young Master Lan has already said that we won't renege on our debt. The primordial chalcedony will definitely be given to young Master Tianqing. However, young Master Lan didn't bring it with him, so he needs to go back to the sect to get it. How can you be so aggressive? You're shameless." Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing were speechless, and they could only suppress the anger in their hearts. They both suspected that the primordial chalcedony was on Qianlan, and that Qianlan was just trying to find an excuse to escape. However, without any evidence, they couldn't do anything to Qianlan. At this time, Ji Tianqing, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. He looked at Qianlan calmly and said, "How precious is the primordial chalcedony? You must treat it like your life, so how can you not bring it with you? You probably think that this king won't fall out with you, and won't search or rob you. That's why you lied so brazenly, right?" Having her thoughts exposed, Qianlan's body stiffened and her expression turned ugly. However, he immediately pretended to be angry and shouted righteously, young Master Tianqing. Even if this king respects you as a senior, you can't slander me and frame me for no reason. Everything I said is true. If you don't believe me, you can follow me back to the 100 Refinements ancient sect. Before he could finish, Ji Tianqing raised his hand and interrupted him. Chapter 3481. It seems like you're determined to offend the 100 Refinements ancient sect and not let us go. Qianlan also flew into a rage out of humiliation. He glared fiercely at Ji Tianqing and asked in a deep voice. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing sneered. He. Qianlan, you're really good at twisting the truth. You're the one who refused to honor your bet and yet you're still trying to twist the truth. Qianlan, I didn't expect you to be so shameless. Luckily, there are so many of us here. If you're determined to go back on your word, we'll let the other clans see how despicable you are. Although Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang did not speak, they knew that things were serious. Both of them retreated to the edge of the hall to avoid being implicated. Ji Tianqing glared at Qianlan and said sternly, I'll say it one last time. Hand over the primordial jade essence or you'll have to bear the consequences. Bear the consequences. Uncle Yen was completely enraged. His body shone with a dazzling divine light as his divine energy surged. You've gone too far. I won't give in. If you want to bully young Master Lan, you'll have to go through me first. As he spoke, Uncle Yen stepped in front of Qianlan and spoke in a dignified manner, Young Master Lan, I'll cover your escape. Qianlan had the same idea. However, how could he act so cowardly in front of so many people? His body shone with divine light as his divine energy surged. He said confidently, Uncle Yen, we're disciples of the 100 Refinements ancient sect. Of course, we'll leave with our heads held high. I'd like to see what kind of ability this guy has to be so arrogant. Seeing Qianlan and Uncle Yan's boiling fighting spirit, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing also laughed out of anger, their bodies bursting with fighting spirit. What? Not only do you want to go back on your word, you want to fight? You want to fight now that you can't go back on your word? Who's afraid of who? Come on. The two brothers stepped forward and stood on Ji Tianqing's left and right. The atmosphere in the hall instantly became hostile. On the surface, Qianlan and Uncle Yen only had 2 people while Ji Tianqing had 3 people. Moreover, Ji Tianqing was a senior expert with a mysterious background. Qianlan and Uncle Yan's aura was immediately suppressed. Their eyes were filled with fear. Uncle Yen frowned and instructed Qianlan via voice transmission, Young Master Lan, I'll hold the 3 of them back. You take the opportunity to escape from the back. As long as you shake them off, they will be wary of the 100 Refinement ancient sect and won't do anything to me. This time, their conversation would not be heard by anyone else. Without waiting for Uncle Yen to finish, Qianlan replied without hesitation, all right, then be careful. Uncle Yan's expression was a little strange, and he quickly swallowed the rest of his words back into his stomach. In the next moment, he shouted in a tragic tone and waved his fists to attack Ji Tianqing. This old man will not tolerate your bullying. Uncle Yen used all of his power and instantly sent out 49 flaming fists towards Ji Tianqing, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing. Each of the flaming fists was as big as a water tank, and their divine power was violent. They also contained dozens of divine Tao laws, and their power was terrifying. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing's expressions were solemn. They used all of their divine power to block and neutralize Uncle Yan's attack. However, before they could do anything, they saw a blur in front of their eyes, and a sky full of sword light bloomed. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ji Tianqing had made his move. Unknowingly, he held the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and instantly sent out 49 flaming white sword lights to meet Uncle Yan's attack. Bang! 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 Muffled sounds erupted as the 49 flaming fist lights were shattered by the sword light, and divine flames that covered the heavens and the earth burst forth. However, the white sword lights tore through space and caused a few pitch-black voids to appear in the hall. The divine flames that covered the sky and earth were all swallowed by the dark voids, and no one was harmed. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing were shocked. Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang were secretly relieved, and their respect for Ji Tianxing grew. Uncle Yen was also stunned. He had expected Ji Tianxing to be more powerful than him, most likely a high-level divine lord. However, he had never thought that Ji Tianxing would use such a simple and violent method to neutralize his attack. The hall was still intact, and his plan to create chaos and give Qianlan a chance to escape had failed. However, he didn't want to give up. He shouted again and used a divine power. This time, he had learned his lesson. Attacking Ji Tianxing was secondary. His main goal was to disperse his attacks and destroy the entire hall to create chaos. However, Uncle Yen was about to use his divine power when he saw a blur in front of his eyes and a figure appeared out of nowhere. In his eyes, there was a fist that was rapidly enlarging. Uncle Yen realized that something was wrong and instinctively wanted to retreat. However, it was too late. Boom! With a loud bang, Ji Tianxing's golden left fist hit Uncle Yen's forehead. Uncle Yen was immediately sent flying and smashed into the wall 100 feet away. More than half of the wall collapsed, and countless pieces of rock were sent flying. Uncle Yen, on the other hand, fell to the ground. His consciousness was blurry and he was unconscious. It was obvious that Ji Tianxing's punch had passed through his forehead and hit his mind, knocking him out. Swish! While the divine light flashed and the pieces of rock were sent flying, Qianlan decisively retreated and passed through the collapsed wall, trying to escape the gold osmanthus palace. However, he had just flown out of the hall and appeared in the sky above the manor when a white figure flashed in front of him. Ji Tianxing had blocked his way. Swish! Qianlan didn't hesitate and used his teleportation technique to move a few thousand miles away from Chang'e City. Unfortunately, the moment he used his teleportation ability, Ji Tianxing slashed out a blazing white sword light and sealed off the entire space of the Gold Laurel Palace. The space around Qianlan froze. He was like a mosquito in ice, unable to move at all. Swish! A cold light flashed, and the pitch-black and cold sword of Burial of Heaven was placed against his neck. Qianlan's body stiffened and his expression turned ugly. He didn't dare to act rashly. The battle had just begun, but it ended abruptly just like that. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing, who had followed closely behind, held their divine weapons and looked murderous. However, when they saw that Uncle Yen had been knocked unconscious and Qianlan had surrendered, they were stunned and quickly put away their weapons. Soon, Lin Zhen and the battle dragon elephant appeared in the courtyard. Qianlan was utterly humiliated in front of everyone. He was furious and humiliated to the extreme. He made up his mind and roared at Ji Tianxing, "I don't have the jade essence, but I do have a life." Ji Tianxing narrowed his eyes and exuded a bone-chilling aura. He asked in a low voice, "Are you sure?" Seeing that he was really angry and filled with murderous intent, Qianlan didn't doubt that he would really kill him. Thus, Qianlan quickly corrected himself. I'm not sure. Senior, I was just joking. Chapter 3482. If it were anyone else, Qianlan would bet that they would be afraid of the 100 smelting ancient sect's reputation and would not dare to kill him. But Ji Tianxing was different. This guy had a mysterious background and was decisive in his methods. His strength was unfathomable. Most importantly, this guy looked calm and low-key, but in reality, he was lawless and killed people like they were grass. Qianlan did not dare to risk his life, so he chose to admit defeat. Seeing Ji Tianxing's brows relax and the cold murderous aura dissipate, Qianlan heaved a sigh of relief. His back was already drenched in cold sweat, and his limbs were numb from the bone-chilling cold. Qianluan grinned and opened his spatial ring with trembling hands. He took out a ball of light. Swoosh! It was an ice-blue ball of light. It was dazzling and filled with divine power. Within the ball of light, there was a ball of white water droplets. They were as bright as diamonds, but also as clear as nectar. Even though they were separated by the ice-blue ball of light, everyone could feel the surging power of the white water droplets. Ji Tianqing observed for a moment. After confirming that it was a 100,000-year-old primordial chalcedony, he kept the burial of heaven. You can get lost now. He kept the primordial chalcedony in his spatial ring and looked at Qianluan from the corner of his eyes. Qianluan glared at him viciously. He did not dare to say another word and quickly turned to fly away. But just as he flew 1,000 feet away, Ji Tianqing shouted again. Take Yan Shangao away. Qianluan was stunned for a moment. Then he remembered that Uncle Yan had been knocked unconscious by Ji Tianqing and was still lying in the ruins. He was so embarrassed that he could not show his face. He flew back to the half-collapsed hall, carried the unconscious Uncle Yan, and quickly left the Gold Laurel Palace. After a while, the Gold Laurel Palace regained its peace. Only Ji Tianqing, Jiang Tianyi, Lin Zhen, and Zhan Longxiang were left. Ji Tianqing did not care about what happened next. Jiang Tianyi looked at the two blacksmithing geniuses with a smile and said sincerely, Lin Zhen, Zhan Longxiang, I already know about the two of you. Both of you are very talented and you are very lucky to have met ninth brother. If you join our Jiang clan, you will be able to learn more profound refining techniques. Only then will you have the chance to break through to the God King realm. Although this prince knows that there are some grudges between the two of you and that you don't want to coexist for the time being. But I have already thought of a countermeasure and arranged everything. If the two of you join the Jiang clan, I will let the two of you cultivate separately. You won't see each other and won't disturb each other. Jiang Tianyi knew it was futile. He was destined to only be able to recruit one genius and lose the other. However, he still wanted to give it a try and make a final effort. After persuading them earnestly, he looked at Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang expectantly and asked, May I ask if you are willing to join the Jiang clan? Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang looked at Ji Tianqing at the same time and nodded. I'm willing. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing were both overjoyed and surprised. Seeing that they were one step closer to success, the two of them felt a little nervous. Jiang Tianqing asked carefully, even if the other party joins the Jiang clan, you don't mind? Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang looked at each other and turned their heads away with contempt and disdain. The two of them looked at Ji Tianqing and nodded at the same time. We don't mind. What? Are you serious? Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing were stunned. They thought they had heard wrongly and were in disbelief. They didn't expect the two blacksmithing geniuses to change their minds and join the Jiang clan at the same time. This was definitely a pleasant surprise. Seeing the two brothers so excited and in disbelief, Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang nodded again to confirm. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing were sure that they didn't hear wrongly and didn't see wrongly. They couldn't hold back their excitement and cheered. That's great. Both of you know the big picture. You are indeed talented. The Jiang clan needs geniuses like you. That's right. You can't throw away your bright future just because of a fit of pique. You have chosen to join the Jiang clan. This is the best decision you have made in your life. For many years to come, you will thank yourselves for making the right choice. The two brothers were excited and in high spirits. At this moment, Zhan Longxiang asked, May I know what position Senior Tianqing holds in the Jiang clan? May I be so bold and shameless as to ask to be Senior Tianqing's disciple? Will I be so lucky? Lin Zhen panicked when he heard Zhan Longxiang speak first. He quickly said, I was about to say this, but Zhan Longxiang beat me to it. I, Lin Zhen, beg Senior Tianqing to take me in. Although I am mediocre and stupid, I dare not hope for Senior's love. But as long as Senior agrees, even if this disciple has to follow by your side as a servant, I'm willing to do so. Zhang Longxiang looked sideways and shouted angrily, Lin Zhen, how can you be so shameless? I was the one who suggested it first. Lin Zhen smirked and raised his chin. So what if you said it first? The key is who Senior Tianqing chooses. Zhang Longxiang said angrily, even if he chooses me, he won't choose you. You greasy-faced, hypocritical, cunning fellow. He. Lin Zhen still smirked. That's because you're too dumb and stupid. It'd be strange if Senior likes you. The two blacksmithing geniuses started arguing in front of everyone again. Ji Tianqing looked indifferent and did not take it to heart. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing were dumbfounded. The two brothers looked at each other awkwardly and secretly communicated with each other through voice transmission. He. Looks like we're thinking too much. The two of them are willing to join the Jiang clan not because they've thought it through, but because of young Master Tianqing. That's right. If they were attracted by the Jiang clan's environment and resources, they would have agreed from the start. Now that they're arguing so fiercely, it's all for young Master Tianqing. There's no choice. Young Master Tianqing is too mysterious and demonic. The two of them would rather be young Master Tianqing's servants than join our Jiang clan. We really have to thank young Master Tianqing for this. He's helped us a lot. If not for him, this matter would not have been resolved. One of the geniuses would have been snatched away by Qianlan. Then why didn't you believe me before? Why did you doubt young Master Tianqing's ability? He. Seventh brother, don't blame me. I was worried that things would go wrong and we'd lose two blacksmithing geniuses. But speaking of which, my attitude was not good and I offended young Master Tianqing. I'll have to apologize to him later. I hope he won't take it to heart. He's our Jiang clan's benefactor. If the clan leader knows that I offended him, he'll skin me alive. The two brothers whispered to each other through telepathy. Lin Zhen and Zhang Longxiang stopped arguing. This was because Ji Tianqing said something. I haven't taken in any disciples for many years, nor have I taught others how to refine weapons. Since you've joined the Jiang clan, someone will naturally arrange for your cultivation and learning. Chapter 3483. Ji Tianqing refused. The two blacksmithing geniuses had nothing to fight over. After all, this senior of the Jiang clan had a high status. His abilities and methods were too mysterious. Although the two of them had pretty good talent in artifact refinement, they were only two high divine lords. They definitely did not have the qualifications to discuss any conditions with a divine king powerhouse. Jiang Tianqing asked when he saw that Lin Zhen and the battle dragon elephant were silent. Their expressions and eyes were filled with disappointment and regret. Then, are you still willing to join the Jiang clan? As soon as he said it, he regretted it. Jiang Tianyi even glared at him and scolded him through voice transmission. Are you a pig? Jiang Tianqing wanted to slap himself. Luckily, Lin Zhen and Zhang Longxiang hesitated for a while and smiled bitterly. Since we've agreed to join the Jiang clan, how can we go back on our words? Although we're not strong enough, we won't go back on our words. We'll definitely fulfill our promise. Although they did not meet their expectations, they could not take back their words. A man could not live without integrity. If the two of them couldn't even do this, how could they maintain their firm will and become divine blacksmiths that they would look up to for the rest of their lives? Not long after, Ji Tianqing, Jiang Tianyi, and the rest left the Gold Laurel Palace. Previously, they had spent nearly 28 days in the Gold Laurel Palace to compete in refining weapons. But in reality, only 5 days and a few hours had passed in the outside world. When they left the Gold Laurel Palace, the sky was just starting to brighten. Jiang Tianyi looked at Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang and said, "We'll be leaving Changle City soon and returning to the Divine Attraction Grotto Heaven. You have 6 hours to pack your bags and say goodbye to your families. At noon, we'll meet at the south gate of Changle City." Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang nodded to show that they understood. Then, they bowed and left. After they returned home, Jiang Tianyi brought Jiang Tianxing and Ji Tianxing to the south gate of Changle City. The three of them bathed in the morning mist and breathed in the fresh air. They were in a good mood. Of course, the Jiang brothers were excited because they had won against the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect and obtained 2 blacksmithing geniuses. The reason Ji Tianxing was so happy was because of the primordial chalcedony. 100,000-year-old primordial chalcedony. Its effects were even more ferocious than high-grade king-grade divine pills. I have to find some time to refine it and break through to the 3rd heaven of the God-King realm. After reaching the 3rd stage realm, you're not far from becoming a middle divine king. He calculated in his heart that after he became a middle-level God-King, he would be able to sweep away all of the middle-level God-Kings. Even if he met a 7th stage realm high-level God-King, he would not be afraid at all. Just as Ji Tianxing was filled with longing, Jiang Tianxing's voice rang in his ears. "Young Master Tianxing, I would like to solemnly apologize to you for my previous recklessness and rudeness. It's my fault for being blind and lacking in knowledge." Ji Tianxing's thoughts were interrupted. He looked sideways at Jiang Tianxing and frowned. He didn't say anything, but Jiang Tianxing's heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, "It's over. Is my apology not sincere enough? From the looks of it, you must be holding a grudge against me. What should I do?" When he thought of this, he looked at Jiang Tianyi for help. Jiang Tianyi was also very worried. He hurriedly persuaded, "Young Master Tianxing, 9th brother is young and ignorant. He didn't mean to offend you. Please forgive us." As they spoke, the 2 brothers bowed apologetically, as if they were admitting their mistakes and apologizing for their sins. Ji Tianxing was even more speechless. He chuckled and said, "Am I such a petty person?" Jiang Tianxing was about to say something, but Jiang Tianyi secretly pinched him and answered with a smile, "Of course not. But 9th brother must apologize for his mistake. I hope you can forgive him." "All right, I never blamed him in the first place. There's no need to talk about forgiveness." Ji Tianxing waved his hand. Seeing this, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief. The 2 brothers hurriedly followed Ji Tianxing's footsteps. Jiang Tianyi asked, "Young Master Tianxing, how do you know so much about the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect? Also, we've only heard of the 100 Refinement Divine Hammer. Not only do you know it thoroughly, you even have the blueprint." Jiang Tianxing hurried over and asked mysteriously, "Young Master Tianhang, the blueprint of the 100 Smelting Divine Hammer must be fake, right? You only used it to provoke Chen Lan and make him agree to compete with you. Because you're certain that you can win and take away his primordial jade essence, right?" Jiang Tianxing was very agitated and spoke very quickly. But just as he finished speaking, he was slapped by Jiang Tianyi on the back of his head and rolled his eyes. Jiang Tianxing finally reacted. He was too agitated and said the wrong thing again. Although Jiang Tianyi also suspected that Ji Tianxing's blueprint was fake, he still thought about it. But this was something that everyone could only think in their hearts. How could they ask? What surprised Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing even more was that Ji Tianxing was not angry. Instead, he said calmly, "Is it important whether it's real or fake? Anyway, Chen Lan didn't get it, right?" The 2 brothers immediately understood and nodded their heads. Yes, young Master Tianxing is right. Too amazing. Indeed, the older the ginger, the spicier it is. Too admirable." After a round of flattery, Jiang Tianxing raised another question. "But, young Master Tianxing, although we know that the blueprint is fake, Qianlan and the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect are certain that it's real. This news will definitely spread to the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. Those old fellows will definitely go crazy looking for you. No matter what method they use, they will definitely get the blueprint. Won't you be in danger then? Before Ji Tianqing could reply, Jiang Tianyi glared at Jiang Tianqing again. If young Master Tianqing isn't worried, what are you worried about? Moreover, young Master Tianqing is very powerful. He said that even Su Bai Lian has to call him senior. What's there to worry about? Moreover, young Master Tianqing wants to follow us back to the Divine Attraction Grotto. Those old fellows from the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect won't dare to barge into the Divine Attraction Grotto and snatch him from the Jiang clan. Jiang Tianqing pondered for a while and felt that it made sense. He nodded his head and said, "That's right. Then we have nothing to worry about." Unknowingly, the three of them had passed through Changle City and arrived at the South Gate. Originally, the three of them were going to wait for Lin Zhen and Zhan Longxiang at the South Gate. However, Ji Tianqing did not want to waste time. He entered Jiang Tianyi's palace first. He entered the secret room, took out the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and entered the distorted space to cultivate. Although he said that he was going to cultivate in seclusion, he was actually going to use the time to refine the primordial jade marrow and break through to the 3rd level of the Divine King realm as soon as possible. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing could only wait at the city gate. It was still early. The two brothers had nothing to do, so they started to chat. "Seventh brother, how did you meet young Master Tianqing? How can there be such a coincidence? Oh right, what's his cultivation level? Logically speaking, he saved the Jiang clan 1,000 years ago. He should be a peak divine king, right? But why doesn't he look like one?" Book Guest House Reading Website. Qianlan had already sent a message to the left protector and sect master of the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect about what had happened in the Gold Kasha Palace. However, the two of them still felt that they had to return to the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect as soon as possible and explain some matters to the left protector and the sect master. Both of them were silent for a long time. Uncle Yen suddenly opened his mouth and exhorted Qianlan, "Young Master Lan, although I was injured by Tianqing and your primordial jade essence was cheated by him, I still have a chance." However, these were all trivial matters. Even if the left protector and the sect master knew about it, they might not make a big fuss over it. Therefore, the main point of our report is the blueprint of the 100 Refining Divine Hammer. Only the blueprint can provoke the elders, the two protectors, and the sect master. Believe me, if we make use of the blueprint, the sect master, the protectors, and the elders will go crazy and attack Tianqing with all their might. When that happens, our chance for revenge will come. Uncle Yan's tone was very serious, and his words were very sincere. There was also a hint of hatred in his voice. However, Qianlan was very upset. When he heard the two words Tianqing, he was about to explode. His chest was burning with flames, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. As such, he growled impatiently, "Of course I know that. Do I need you to remind me? Of course, your injuries are not important. However, my primordial jade essence is very important. That is a treasure that I am saving for when I break through to the upper Divine King stage. That's my lifeblood. Do you understand?" Uncle Yen was flustered by Qianlan's roar. He subconsciously looked below Qianlan's waist. "What are you looking at?" Qianlan glared at him with reddened eyes and growled again. Uncle Yen was completely speechless. He decided to ignore him and focus on driving the divine worship. At the same time, in a certain empire in the middle of the Hengshan region, a dazzling golden light streaked across the sky like an aurora, flying towards the south. The object in the golden light was not the divine worship. Instead, it was a huge hairpin that was about 1,000 feet long. Without a doubt, this was the space-piercing hairpin of the divine envoy Shadow Executioner. Inside the space-piercing hairpin, there were only divine envoy Shadow Executioner, divine envoy Ku Yun, divine envoy Xing Xian, and Bai Feng. Over the past few days, the four divine kings had been taking turns to drive the space-piercing hairpin, rushing to the Hengshan region as quickly as possible. During this process, the three divine envoys even asked Bai Feng to cast a spell to detect the whereabouts of Ji Tianqing and the others. Fortunately, the results of Bai Feng's investigation allowed the three divine envoys to heave a sigh of relief. Ji Tianqing and the others were still in the Hengshan region. Furthermore, they had stopped within the Hengshan Empire and had not moved. This result caused the three divine envoys' eyes to light up. They were filled with hope. Could it be that those traitors are hiding in the Hengshan Empire and not running away anymore? Ha ha ha. They must have thought that they would be safe after escaping into the Hengshan region and hiding within the Hengshan Empire. But they would never have imagined that we still have Divine King Bai Feng. No matter where they escape to, Divine King Bai Feng will be able to find them. Since they are hiding in the Hengshan Empire and not leaving, then things will be easy. Thus, the space-piercing hairpin rushed towards the Hengshan Empire. The three divine envoys also made up their minds to find Ji Tianqing and the others even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground. Just this afternoon, after the space-piercing hairpin entered the Hengshan Empire, the three divine envoys then asked Bai Feng to cast a secret spell to detect the whereabouts of Ji Tianqing and the others. Although they knew that Ji Tianqing and the others were in the Hengshan Empire, the Hengshan region was too large. However, the Hengshan Empire was too big, so it was impossible to find Ji Tianqing and the others in a short period of time. Only when Bai Feng cast a secret spell to roughly determine the whereabouts of Ji Tianqing and the others would they be able to search for them. Hearing the orders of the three divine envoys, Bai Feng felt like cursing in his heart. Every time he cast a secret spell, he would use up a huge amount of divine power. His mind would also be extremely tired. More importantly, he could vaguely sense that every time he cast a secret spell, it would affect his lifespan in Divine Tao Foundation. Thus, he would only cast it once or twice every few years. But now, he had to use it every few days. Moreover, the three divine envoys were staring at him with a firm attitude. He had to cast a secret spell. Apart from casting a secret spell, he also had to take turns controlling the space-piercing hairpin. Bai Feng was already very, very tired. He felt like he was about to be hollowed out. But he could not disobey the orders. He could only grit his teeth and continue casting the secret spell. Finally, he found the whereabouts of Ji Tianqing and the others. They are still in the Hengshan Empire, but they have already moved. They are fleeing towards the south. After he found out, Bai Feng collapsed to the ground with a pale face. He was completely exhausted. Chapter 3485. Unfortunately, the three divine envoys only cared about the results. They did not care about Bai Feng's condition. Was he tired? Could he persevere? At this moment, they were all very excited, and they looked as if they were determined to win. That's great. They are still in the Hengshan Empire and are not far from us. That's not right. They did not move for the past few days. Why did they suddenly move today? Could it be that they also have some divine ability that can detect our approach? That's impossible. They are not Bai Feng. How could they have such ability? No matter what, we are now in the Hengshan Empire and are very close to them. Didn't they escape towards the south? Let's just chase them towards the south. If there are no accidents, we can find them within 2 days at most. Alright, let's fly towards the south now. At the same time, inform the group of god kings behind us to catch up as soon as possible. The three divine envoys discussed for a while and quickly came up with a plan. Throughout the entire process, no one looked at Bai Feng. Bai Feng forcefully propped up his nearly unconscious body and crawled up from the ground. He silently put away his command flag. Then, he sat cross-legged on the ground and consumed a divine pill to recover his divine power. As for where Ji Tianqing and the others were and when they would be caught, he did not care at all. He only knew. He was very tired now. His entire body had been hollowed out, and his mind was in a daze. If he did not properly recuperate, his foundation of the divine Tao would be destroyed. Not to mention that he would become a cripple, but his strength would also regress and affect his future cultivation. Of course. Recuperating was not something that could be completed in 3 to 5 days. If possible, he really wanted to recuperate in seclusion for 3 to 5 years. Inside the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda. Only a day and a half had passed in the outside world, but Ji Tianqing had already been in seclusion for 2.5 months. In these 2.5 months, he only did one thing. Refine the primordial chalcedony. Although a 100,000-year-old primordial chalcedony was an excellent God-King grade material. If he spent some time and effort, and added a few top-grade herbs, he could refine it into a high-grade King-grade divine pill. After consuming it, the effects would be excellent and its power would double. However, Ji Tianqing could not wait any longer. He had neither the time nor the means to find so many top-notch medicinal herbs. After all, wanting to gather those few medicinal herbs, they very likely had to search the entire boundless heaven continent. He might even have to enter the grotto heavens and blessed lands to make deals with the ancient clans. In fact, he even had to leave the firmament and enter the void to search for some of the top-tier materials. After some rough estimation, these things were not something that could be completed in 3 to 5 years. At least 100 years. How could Ji Tianqing have so much time to waste? Therefore, he chose to refine the primordial chalcedony directly. This was the simplest and most crude method. Of course, the effect was also the weakest. If one were to say that refining the primordial chalcedony into a high-grade king-level divine pill would double the effects, then refining it into a high-grade king-level divine pill would have doubled the effect. If he directly refined the primordial jade marrow now, he would only have 60% to 70% of the effect. But Ji Tianqing didn't care. The primordial chalcedony was precious, but the treasures he had in his previous life were much more valuable than it. Furthermore, he was confident that he would obtain more treasures similar to the primordial chalcedony in the future. 2.5 months was enough for Ji Tianqing to completely refine the primordial chalcedony. What was gratifying was that the effect was not bad. He successfully absorbed the energy of the primordial chalcedony and his divine power increased by several times. Then, he naturally broke through to the 3rd level of the divine king realm. That was not all. After breaking through to the 3rd level of the divine king realm, his power was still increasing rapidly without any signs of stopping. Every few days, his power would increase by 1-fold. After 2.5 months, when the potential of the primordial chalcedony was exhausted, he reached the 3rd level of the divine king realm. That's right. He was indeed in the 3rd level of the divine king realm, just 1 step away from the great circle. In other words, he was only 2 steps away from becoming a 4th level divine king. This result surprised Ji Tianqing. But after thinking about it carefully, it was reasonable. In my previous life, I once obtained a portion of the primordial chalcedony from the left guardian of the 100 Refinements ancient sect. I spent a lot of time and effort to refine it into a king-grade high-grade divine pill. After consuming it, my power did increase by 1-fold. But at that time, I was in the 9th level of the divine king realm, very close to the peak. Now, I am only in the 2nd level of the divine king realm. It is normal for me to have such an effect after refining a portion of the primordial chalcedony. Ji Tianqing thought about it and felt relieved. But he still felt that it was a pity. He sighed to himself. Sigh. It is a pity that there is not much of this primordial chalcedony. If there was half more, I would be able to break through to the fourth level of the Divine King realm. At that time, I would be able to become a middle-level Divine King and save so much time. His situation was getting more and more dangerous. Therefore, his desire for power was getting stronger and stronger. It was also because of this that he wasted such a precious item and could not wait to refine the primordial chalcedony. Phew, after ending his seclusion, Ji Tianqing let out a long breath and decided to leave the distorted spacetime. Swoosh! He left the divine pagoda and returned to the secret room in the Palace of Heaven's Will. At this time, the door of the secret room flashed with divine light and let out a series of hurried chimes. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing, who was originally in a relaxed and happy mood, suddenly frowned and the smile on his face disappeared. What's going on? Why is it so urgent that Jiang Tianyi directly knocked on the door? This thought flashed through his mind. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and cast a spell to open the door of the secret room. Ka ka ka. The moment the door of the secret room opened, Ji Tianqing saw an anxious young man in golden armor standing outside the door. It was not Jiang Tianyi, but Jiang Tianqing. Ji Tianqing had just stepped out of the secret room and did not even have time to ask Jiang Tianqing what had happened. Jiang Tianqing was burning with anxiety. He shouted at an extremely fast speed, "Young Master Tianqing, we have been intercepted." As he spoke, he could not help but pull Ji Tianqing towards the palace's main entrance. Intercepted? By who? Ji Tianqing asked with a frown as he quickly followed and walked towards the main entrance. I don't know them, but those four fellows are all god kings. As Jiang Tianqing spoke, he unsheathed his sword and exuded an intense fighting spirit. Seventh brother said that he knows one of the god kings and that he is currently dealing with them. Jiang Tianqing's words were muddled, and Ji Tianqing did not understand what was going on. He simply stopped asking Jiang Tianqing and flew to the palace's main entrance in a flash. Then, he clearly saw the scene outside the palace and understood what was going on. The Palace of Heaven's Will was located in the southernmost part of the Hengshan Empire, not far from the border. The palace was suspended in the air above a barren mountain range, surrounded by clouds and mist. 100 miles ahead, within the hazy clouds, there were indeed four god kings. They fanned out and blocked the palace's path. Ji Tianqing recognized two of the god kings. They were Stellar Aspect and Baifeng. There was no doubt that Stellar Aspect and the others had found their way here. Chapter 3486. Ji Tianqing was still in a daze when he saw Oracle Xing Xiang, Baifeng, and the others. There was only one thought in his mind. Although I already knew that Divine Emissary Stellar Aspect had gathered two Divine Emissaries and many God Kings to try and kill me on a grand scale, I didn't expect that Divine Emissary Stellar Aspect would try to kill me. But shouldn't they be in the Red Dragon region? Why are they in the Hengshan Empire? Could it be that our whereabouts have been exposed? Oracle Xing Xiang has this ability. No. It's definitely not Oracle Xing Xiang. Looking at Baifeng's tired face, it should be related to him. Ji Tianqing vaguely remembered that Baifeng was not only a high-level god king, but also had the bloodline of the Phoenix clan and a pair of mysterious god eyes. Therefore, Ji Tianqing's first suspect was Baifeng. Actually, Baifeng felt very bitter. He was already dog-tired. Wasn't it comfortable to rest in the sky-piercing hairpin? He could rest for 3 to 5 years, and when he returned to his peak, he would be a good man again. But Oracle Xing Xiang was different. In just a day and a half, he was lucky enough to block Jiang Tianyi's palace. And Oracle Xing Xiang was even more shameless. He had just blocked Jiang Tianyi's palace when he put away the sky-piercing hairpin. Then, the three divine envoys appeared in the sky with murderous looks on their faces. They fanned out to block the path of the palace. Baifeng was naturally in trouble. After the sky-piercing hairpin was put away, he appeared in the sky. And he was defenseless, mentally exhausted, and his god power was weak. This was very awkward. He wanted to be like the three oracles, blocking the sky with murderous intent. But he could not. He felt that he was not qualified to participate in this battle. Yes, he was not qualified. Even though he was a high-level god king, in his current situation, he could not even take down Jiang Tianqing and Jiang Tianyi, let alone Ji Tianqing. He wanted to return to the sky-piercing hairpin or leave this place to find a place to rest. However, the atmosphere in the field was tense and full of murderous intent. He could not open his mouth. Therefore, he could only stay in the sky to make up the numbers. At most, he did not make a sound and tried to reduce his presence. But even so, when Jiang Tianyi walked out of the palace gate, he noticed him at first glance. When Ji Tianqing appeared at the gate of the palace, he also saw him at first glance. As for the first glance, of course, it was at Oracle Xingxiang. Both parties hovered in the sky, 100 miles apart, looking at each other. Ji Tianqing and Jiang Tianyi's eyes were filled with murderous intense eyes. On the other hand, Stellar Aspect Ambassador was filled with pride, excitement, and excitement. His face was filled with a sinister and cruel sneer. He. He's SSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSS Tianzas. Xiangzas, his Xiangzas Chen Xiangzes at the very least, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianyi could clearly sense Oracle Xing Xiangzas. They could not imagine just how much Ji Tianqing had offended Stellar Aspect Emissary to such an extent that he would hate Ji Tianqing so much. Ji Tianqing was not worried or hesitant at all. He glanced at Oracle Xing Xiang and said, "You've been looking for helpers to kill me, there's nothing strange about that. But aren't you going to introduce those two fellows beside you? And what's with that soft-footed by phone?" Ji Tianqing was not anxious at all, and there was not even much anger or killing intent on his face. It was just a casual question, as if he was chatting, but there was a hint of mockery in his tone. Oracle Xing Xiang was not stupid. He did not reveal Baifeng's God Eyes Supremes. Instead, he pointed to the two oracles on his left and right and introduced, "These two are the same as me, the God Emperors, patrol envoys, the overseers of the boundless heaven continent. Tianqing, although you are beyond redemption and will die without a doubt, I still have to advise you. But this prince still wants to give you a word of advice. Obediently allow yourself to be captured and stretch out your neck to be executed. Don't wait for us to act, otherwise, you won't even have a complete corpse left." Such a simple sentence, but it contained an intense, tyrannical, killing intent. Clearly, Oracle Xing Xiang was certain that Ji Tianqing was in his grasp. In his opinion, with him and the two oracles present, plus by phone, it was enough to take down Ji Tianqing easily. Even if there were any mistakes or mishaps, the other 11 God Kings would quickly arrive. They only needed to delay for 2 to 4 hours, and they would still be able to kill Ji Tianqing. In short, Ji Tianqing was dead meat. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, "With Baifeng's current state, it's hard to say if she can even stand up, let alone participate in the battle. So, with just the three of you, you want to take us down? It's a fool's dream. I remember that among the helpers you gathered, there were not only these two oracles, but also many God Kings. If I'm not wrong, you are just the vanguard, rushing over to stop me. There are also more than 10 God Kings on the way to support you, right?" Actually, this question was not difficult to guess. However, for Ji Tianqing to say it so openly, it still made Celestial Aspect Emissary feel very awkward. It felt as if Ji Tianqing had seen through him and seen through all his trump cards. Oracle Xing Xiang was inexplicably panicked and worried. He felt that since Ji Tianqing knew all this and could still remain calm, he must have some trump card. But the two oracles, Zhang Ning and Ku Yun, did not think so much. The two oracles sneered, looking confident and domineering. Ha ha ha. Traitor, you're not too stupid. You know that you're on the path of no return, right? Little bastard, since you know that you're going to die, why are you still standing there? Kneel down and surrender. Although the two oracles had heard from Oracle Xing Xiang that Ji Tianqing's strength and methods were extraordinary, they must be careful. But they had been oracles for thousands of years and were used to being domineering. They could not change their attitude of looking down on the common people in a short time. At this moment, they only wanted to see Ji Tianqing helplessly and hopelessly kneel down and beg for surrender. But when Oracle Xing Xiang heard the words of his two companions, his face changed, and his eyes flashed with deep regret and anger. Damn it! You two bastards, can't you tell that he's just trying to trick us? Of course, he only thought about it in his mind and did not dare to say it out loud. After all, Ku Yun and Zhao Ning had the same status as him. Moreover, he had begged Zhao Ning and Ku Yun to help. No matter how angry and dissatisfied he was, Oracle Xing Xiang did not know how to hold it in. He hurriedly changed the topic, trying to stall for time. But Ji Tianqing suddenly sneered and did not waste any more time. Ha ha ha. If that's the case, then you can go to hell. As he sneered, Ji Tianqing turned into a dazzling golden light and rushed toward Oracle Xing Xiang. Jiang Tianyi also put away his palace. Together with Jiang Tianqing, he unsheathed his divine sword and attacked. Chapter 3487. Damn it! Seeing this, Divine Ambassador Xing Xiang really wanted to scold him. Divine Ambassador Zhao Ning and Divine Ambassador Ku Yun were also stunned. Clearly, they did not expect Ji Tianqing to be so ruthless and decisive, directly attacking. However, the two of them immediately regained their senses and confidently took out their divine weapons to counterattack. He. You know that you have nowhere to run, so you still want to struggle? Little bastard, I wanted to let you live for a few more hours, but since you're courting death, we'll fulfill your wish. The two divine ambassadors were not afraid at all. They waved their divine spears and divine sabers with all their might, using their ultimate techniques. Swish! 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 Dazzling blades of divine light instantly bloomed in the sky, illuminating the surrounding tens of thousands of miles. Each blade of light contained the power to destroy heaven and earth, as well as many divine Tao laws. Its power was unfathomable. At this moment, the surrounding tens of thousands of miles became dazzling, and space became chaotic. Under such circumstances, no one could teleport to escape or dodge. The only thing both sides could do was to go all out and clash. Boom! 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 Kacha! Kacha! In the next moment, a deafening explosion erupted, reverberating endlessly in the sky. The sky for tens of thousands of miles was shattered, and the ground and mountains collapsed, sending smoke and dust into the sky. Ji Tianqing, Jiang Tianyi, and Jiang Tianqing all attacked, using their ultimate techniques. Divine Ambassador Xing Xiang, Divine Ambassador Zhao Ning, and Ku Yun also did not hold back, using everything they had. The collision of 6 God-King experts created a shockwave that could destroy heaven and earth. At the very least, everything within a radius of 20,000 miles was reduced to ruins. Mountains, valleys, and forests no longer existed. There were 7 God-Kings present, but only 6 of them participated in the battle. Without a doubt, Bai Feng had turned around and fled into the distance the moment the battle began. Ji Tianqing was right. It was difficult for him to even protect himself now, let alone participate in the battle. Of course, the 6 God-Kings participating in the battle were too focused, and no one paid attention to him. Kill! Kill that little bastard! Xing Xiang, you boasted about how heaven-defying he is, but from the looks of it, he's only a so-so. In the first round of clashes, neither side was able to gain the upper hand. They could be considered evenly matched. Even though Ji Tianqing's combat power was very strong, surpassing that of any one of the three oracles, he was still unable to defeat Ji Tianqing. Jiang Tianyi's battle prowess was not bad, he was on par with Xing Xiang God Emissary. However, Jiang Tianqing was a hindrance to them. After all, Jiang Tianqing was only a young man in the 5th level of the Divine King realm. Among the 3 god envoys, the weakest 2 were at the 6th level of the Divine King realm. The strongest among them was God envoy Zhaning, who had reached the 7th level of the Divine King realm. Little bastard, hand over your life. Your time of death has come. Accept your fate. After the first exchange, Zhaning and Ku Yun both roared and launched a second round of attacks. However, this time, the situation in front of them left them a little dumbfounded. Ji Tianqing held a sword in his right hand and a mysterious black tower in his left. After a few flashes of divine light, 2 figures appeared beside him. One of them was a handsome middle-aged god clan man in a long green robe. The other was a monster dozens of feet tall, whose body seemed to be made of stone. Moreover, these 2 figures who had suddenly appeared were both intermediate god kings. In an instant, Ji Tianqing's side had 5 god kings. Their combat power had increased by a large margin. Chao Qingyu and Yank, who had just joined the battle, did not say a word of nonsense. In fact, even without Ji Tianqing's order, the 2 of them charged fearlessly towards the 3 god envoys without any regard for their own safety. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing were stunned for a moment. Then, they unleashed their full strength and charged towards the 3 god envoys. As for Ji Tianqing, he did not wield the sword of burial of heaven to attack. Instead, he pointed the sword at the sky and shouted solemnly, "Sword, come!" Instantly. In the distant sky, tens of thousands of stars lit up. Like a dense meteor shower, they rained down in a frenzy. The 3 god envoys felt great pressure and danger. Their hearts tightened. They looked up and saw that there were more than 28,000 star swords. Each star sword was thousands of feet long and contained hundreds of laws and divine power. They were extremely powerful and violent. Not good. Dodge. What kind of monster is this kid? He can summon the stars with a wave of his hand and turn them into tens of thousands of star swords. Damn it. In the end, we underestimated this guy. He seems to have become stronger again. At this moment, shock and fear flashed through the minds of the 3 god envoys. Especially God envoy Xing Xiang. He felt it the most. He clearly remembered that Ji Tianqing's strength was not so terrifying a few months ago. Although Ji Tianqing could defeat him and severely injure him back then, it was a very difficult victory. But it was different now. Ji Tianqing's every movement was exuding a terrifying pressure that was enough to make him feel terrified and terrified. Wasn't this improvement too terrifying? Rumble. In the next moment, the 28,000 star swords slammed into the ground. The divine powers that the 3 divine envoys had unleashed were instantly shattered into pieces and turned into ashes. Not only that, but their divine power shields also collapsed and exploded into pieces. Most importantly, the 28,000 star swords did not disperse on the spot. They covered a radius of 20,000 miles and formed a huge sword net that sealed off the area. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The sword light crisscrossed and intertwined. In the blink of an eye, a heaven-destroying sword array with a radius of 20,000 miles was formed. An unparalleled suppressive force enveloped the 3 god envoys, making their bodies stiff and difficult to move. Not only were they fearful, but their divine power was also greatly hindered and their combat strength plummeted. This made them feel hopeless. Zhaning and Ku Yun looked at each other and saw the horror in each other's eyes. This damned beast. How dare he form an array with a wave of his hand? How arrogant is he? How dare he set up a sword array to seal us 3 god envoys? Generally speaking, only a very powerful person would choose to use an array to fight against a large group of weak people. This way, they could kill their opponents faster. If they were of similar strength, this method would not work. But Ji Tianqing had done it. One could imagine how confident Ji Tianqing was. Whoosh, 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 soon, the heaven-destroying sword array was activated and released more than 10,000 star swords to kill the 3 god envoys. Countless star swords formed a sword net that enveloped the 3 god envoys and forcibly separated them. Countless star swords formed a few hurricanes that wreaked havoc in the sword array. Many more star swords formed a huge sword that could split heaven and earth and slashed at the 3 god envoys. Suddenly, the 3 god envoys were in an extremely dangerous situation. They were forced to retreat in a fluster. Seeing this, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianqing were shocked. The 2 brothers looked at each other and thought at the same time. Oh my God! Young Master Tianqing is not only a top divine blacksmith, but also a master of arrays and swordsmanship. Chapter 3488. Ji Tianqing's craftsmanship had already earned the respect and admiration of the Jiang brothers. Now that the battle had begun, his array and swordsmanship skills were equally unfathomable. The 2 brothers were even more shocked and even fearful. For a supreme being to be proficient in something and reach the pinnacle of it is already a lifetime achievement. But young Master Tianqing seems to be proficient in everything and has reached the pinnacle of it. Is there any justice in this world? In fact, the Jiang brothers were the direct disciples of the ancient clans. They were definitely 1 in a million talents. But after meeting Ji Tianqing, they realized how laughable they were. A powerhouse like Ji Tianqing was a true peerless talent. That's not right. He's not a young man, he's a senior. So, he can't be called a genius, he can only be called a senior almighty. Thinking of this, the 2 brothers' thoughts became clear. Originally, they were still worried that they could not defeat the 3 divine messengers. But now, with a senior almighty watching over them, what was there to be afraid of? They just had to fight. Kill. Damn divine messengers, eat my sword. The 2 brothers' blood boiled as they waved their swords and attacked the 3 divine messengers. Swoosh. 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 Bam. 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 The divine sword radiance that blotted out the sky and the earth, as well as the dazzling divine arts, poured down in torrents, drowning the figures of the 3 divine envoys. Not only were the Jiang brothers working hard, but Chao Qingyu and Yank were also doing their best. Even Ji Tianqing was not idle. He waved his sword and used all sorts of swordsmanship skills to attack. After all, this was his first battle after breaking through to the 3rd level of the Divine King realm. He also wanted to use actual combat to test how much his combat power had increased compared to before. Besides, the heaven-vanquishing sword formation was also suppressing the 3 divine messengers. There were also more than 10,000 giant swords that were constantly attacking and killing. The 3 divine messengers were in trouble. The battle had only started for less than 10 breaths, but the 3 divine messengers had already been beaten to a pulp. The first to be injured was Xing Xiang. He was the first to bear the brunt of Ji Tianqing's attention. Not only were there 3 sword wounds on his body, they were so deep that his bones could be seen, and he was dripping with blood. Even his left arm was almost cut off by Ji Tianqing's sword. The second person injured was God emissary Ku Yun. He was in a more miserable state. After his armor was shattered by the huge swords that filled the sky, there were a few more bloody wounds on his chest and back. Then, his left hand was cut off by Jiang Tianyi. This was very humiliating. It was understandable that he was injured by Ji Tianqing. After all, Ji Tianqing had a record of severely injuring Celestial Aspect Emissary and was publicly acknowledged as their #1 enemy. But who was Jiang Tianyi? He had never heard of him before. He was a complete stranger. However, such a young god king with no presence had actually crippled Divine Emissary Withered Cloud's left palm. How could he not feel aggrieved? Thus, Divine Emissary Ku Yun was filled with grief and indignation. He no longer focused on Ji Tianqing and instead focused on Jiang Tianyi. If he did not kill this young god king, where would he put his face as a divine emissary? Divine Emissary Ku Yun crazily counterattacked Jiang Tianyi. This made Jiang Tianyi very uncomfortable and he was in a precarious situation. However, he was indeed a young talent of the Jiang clan. Even if he was suppressed by Divine Emissary Ku Yun's crazy aura, he would not be defeated so quickly. In this way, it was equivalent to him entangling Divine Emissary Ku Yun. Jiang Tianxing, Chao Qingyu, and Yank targeted Celestial Aspect Emissary. None of the three were a match for Celestial Aspect Emissary. However, with the three of them working together with the Heaven-Punishing Sword Array, they naturally had the upper hand against Celestial Aspect Emissary. Celestial Aspect Emissary was beaten to the point of being unable to fight back. Moreover, his injuries continued to worsen. He was so aggrieved and angry that he wanted to vomit blood. As for the strongest Divine Emissary, Shadow Executioner, he was naturally left to Ji Tianqing. That was then and this was now. Not long ago, Ji Tianqing was fighting with Bai Feng, who was also in the 7th stage, and it was difficult for him to hold his own. But now, his strength had increased by several times. Not to mention Bai Feng, even Divine Emissary Shadow Executioner was not his match. Rise of the Sword. Sword breaking the 9 heavens. Heavenly Dragon Slash. Starry River Break. Ji Tianqing's left hand formed a sword seal while his right hand waved the burial of heaven. His posture was elegant as he continuously used one ultimate move after another. Divine Emissary Shadow Executioner was beaten until he was dizzy and had almost no strength to fight back. He could only defend with all his might. Even so, thousands of divine giant swords attacked him, making it impossible for him to defend himself. He constantly revealed flaws. Chi. PFFF. Bam. All kinds of muffled sounds were heard as Divine Emissary Shadow Executioner's body kept bursting with dazzling blood. In less than 100 breaths, his chest and back were covered with wounds and dripping with blood. Not long after, Ji Tianqing took advantage of the moment when he was frantically dodging and used the Sword of Annihilation. This ultimate move borrowed the power of the 5 elements world and was one of Ji Tianqing's ultimate moves. Its power was extremely terrifying. Swish. The giant golden sword slashed down with a loud bang. Divine Emissary Shadow Executioner despaired. Kaboom. The divine light he sent out was shattered by the Sword of Annihilation. The shield formed by his divine power and the armor he wore were also shattered by the giant sword. Then, he was also sent flying by the divine golden sword. Only a leg was left flying in the sky as blood splattered everywhere. Boom! Divine Emissary Shadow Executioner flew 300 miles and crashed into the ruins. A huge crater was smashed into the ground that looked like ruins, and countless cracks appeared around it. Without a doubt, Divine Emissary Shadow Executioner was heavily injured and his strength had greatly decreased. Seeing this scene, Divine Emissary Xing Xiang and Divine Emissary Ku Yun, who were already in a dangerous situation, were filled with fear and despair. Even Divine Emissary Shadow Executioner, who was the strongest, was beaten so miserably. Wouldn't the two of them be doomed? That's right. Xing Xiang and Ku Yun were indeed doomed. Ji Tianqing took advantage of the moment when Xing Xiang God Emissary was filled with fear and distraction to teleport behind him. Yes, Ji Tianqing did not chase after Divine Emissary Shadow Executioner but instead charged toward Divine Emissary Xing Xiang. Of the three divine emissaries, he hated divine emissary Xing Xiang the most. All the pursuit, encirclement, and killing that had caused such a huge commotion were all because of divine emissary Xing Xiang. This guy was the main culprit. He must die. Spacetime blade. Divine emissary Xing Xiang only came back to his senses when Ji Tianqing appeared behind him. When Ji Tianqing waved the sword of burial of heaven and thrust out a mysterious black and white sword light, it was too late for him to dodge. At this moment, divine emissary Xing Xiang's face was pale and his eyes were filled with anxiety and fear. This sword light that contained the laws of time and space seemed to freeze space and slow down the flow of time. Under everyone's gaze, it pierced through divine emissary Xing Xiang's head. Blood splattered everywhere. Divine emissary Xing Xiang's head exploded and blood splattered all over the sky. Of course, there were also more than 20 quintessence shards that floated down from the sky. Divine emissary Xing Xiang, who was at the 6th level divine king realm, was killed by Ji Tianqing just like that. Instant kill at the critical moment. After making up his mind, the Shadow Executioner envoy did not launch a counterattack. Instead, he turned around and rushed to the edge of the heaven-destroying sword formation. He only wanted to shake off Ji Tianqing, break through the heaven-destroying sword formation as soon as possible, and escape from this place. Moreover, he had the qualifications and trump cards to do so. On the other side, Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tianxing, Chao Qingyu, and Yank were also in high spirits as they attacked God Representative Ku Yun together. God Representative Ku Yun was so depressed and aggrieved that he almost vomited blood. The moment God Representative Xing Xiang was killed, he had a premonition that he would be in trouble. However, he had never imagined that his opponent would be so shameless. Ji Tianqing went to deal with the Shadow Executioner envoy, while the remaining 4 God Kings all attacked him fiercely. Wasn't this too unreasonable? The Shadow Executioner envoy is clearly stronger, 1 level higher than me. He is your number 1 enemy, your target to kill. Do you all have to kill me? Do you think I'm easy to bully? Do you want to pick on the weak? However, no matter how angry God Representative Ku Yun was, it was useless. When the 4 God Kings arrived in front of him, he could only muster his strength and resist with all his might. However, it was futile. He had indeed blocked Chao Qingyu and Jiang Tianqing's attacks. However, he had not been able to block Jiang Tianyi and Yank's violent attacks. Then, tragedy befell him. Boom! 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 With a deafening explosion, divine emissary Ku Yun was sent flying back, his body covered in blood. His left arm had been completely severed, and his right leg had been severed from the middle, splinters flying everywhere. God Representative Ku Yun's fate was tragic. After suffering such heavy injuries, his strength had dropped by at least 30%. However, this was not the worst. Ji Tianqing, who was not far away, had wanted to use this opportunity to chase after the Shadow Executioner envoy. However, the Shadow Executioner envoy had made up his mind. He had no intention of fighting back, nor did he have any intention of dealing with him. He turned and fled toward the edge of the sword formation. This left Ji Tianqing speechless. The battle had just begun, and the 2 sides had only exchanged a few blows, yet he was in such a hurry to escape. Who would have thought that he was such a cowardly God King? Ji Tianqing saw that chasing after the Shadow Executioner envoy would definitely take some time and effort. After all, no matter how cowardly the Shadow Executioner envoy was, he was still a true God King. However, the nearby God Representative Ku Yun had just been sent flying by Jiang Tianyi's group of 4, missing an arm and a leg. This was an excellent opportunity. In any case, he would kill whoever he killed, sooner or later. In that case, he would kill God Representative Ku Yun first. It was decided then. Thus, Ji Tianxing used his teleportation ability again and appeared behind God Representative Ku Yun like a ghost. Poor God Representative Ku Yun had just stabilized himself and did not even have time to check his injuries. All of a sudden, a sword light as dazzling as the sun shone behind him. Apocalypse Sword. It was the Apocalypse Sword again. In any case, the Five Elements world was very powerful now, and the world energy it provided was terrifying. When this sword descended, God Representative Ku Yun immediately despaired. He looked on helplessly as the golden sword light continued to grow larger and larger in his eyes. He wanted to dodge, but he could not. He wanted to block, but he could not erupt with much divine power, and it was too late. Crack! In the next instant, the dazzling golden light engulfed God Representative Ku Yun. When the giant divine sword struck him, there was a loud sound like ice shattering. Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tianxing, Chao Qingyu, and Yang all watched as God Representative Ku Yun was cleaved in half by the giant sword. Then, the two halves of the corpse collapsed and exploded, spraying thousands of pieces of debris. God Representative Ku Yun had also fallen. His fate was even worse than God Representative Xing Xiang's, his body exploding into pieces that scattered across the ruins. The godhead was also chopped into pieces. More than 20 fragments flew out and drifted down in the night sky. This scene was just as shocking as God Representative Xing Xiang's death. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing both widened their eyes. Shock flashed through their eyes, and their nerves were stretched taut. At the same time, their doubts about Ji Tianxing's strength were greatly dispelled. After all, Ji Tianxing had killed 2 opponents in a row in a short span of 10 breaths. Whether it was God Representative Xing Xiang or God Representative Ku Yun, they were both genuine mid-level God Kings. Moreover, they were both at the 6th level of the God King realm, one of the best amongst mid-level God Kings. If someone said that Ji Tianxing was not a high-level God King, who would believe them? Only a high-level God King would have such terrifying means. Chapter 3490. After killing God Emissary Ku Yun, Ji Tianxing put away his godhead fragment as usual. At this moment, there was only one target left in the heaven-destroying sword formation. God Emissary Shadow Executioner. Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tianxing, and the others also woke up from their shock. Everyone also realized that 2 of the 3 emissaries had been killed, and only God Emissary Shadow Executioner was left. Then, God Emissary Shadow Executioner's death had come. Thinking of this, everyone turned their heads to the north of the heaven-destroying sword formation. But the scene in front of them shocked them, and their expressions became very strange. Because God Emissary Shadow Executioner, who was the strongest, had not participated in the battle. Even when God Emissary Ku Yun was killed, he had no intention of helping. He actually put away his divine weapon and took out a divine hairpin that was hundreds of meters long. That's right. It was obviously a hairpin used by women, but it exuded a powerful aura. God Emissary Shadow Executioner did not counterattack. Instead, he went into the hairpin and pushed the hairpin's power to the extreme, exploding with the fastest speed possible as he slammed into the edge of the sword formation. He was running away. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing, Jiang Tianyi, and the others were very anxious. Everyone rushed toward the hairpin, wanting to stop God Emissary Shadow Executioner. But unfortunately, the 2 sides were more than 8,000 miles apart. Even if they teleported, it would take an instant. There was not enough time. Unless the heaven-destroying sword formation could withstand the impact of the hairpin. The heaven-destroying sword formation was made up of 28,000 giant swords. Half of the giant swords surrounded the formation, forming a light wall that covered the sky. The other half of the giant swords were inside the sword formation, forming a hurricane, a sword net, and a vortex. That seemingly thick light wall that covered the sky might not be able to withstand the impact of the hairpin. Kaboom! In the next moment, the hairpin hit the light wall of the sword formation like a shooting star. A deafening sound exploded in the sword formation, echoing through the sky. Following the explosion, a huge gap appeared in the dazzling light wall, and thousands of pieces of debris flew out. In addition, cracks also extended out from the gap that was 1,000 feet wide. The entire heaven-destroying sword formation shook and swayed along with it, its energy fluctuating chaotically. In the end, the heaven-destroying sword array was unable to block the sky-piercing hairpin and was broken through by the Shadow Executioner envoy. Shwa! Amidst the debris and starlight, the sky-piercing hairpin passed through the gap and escaped from the heaven-destroying sword formation. Then, Shadow Executioner's pressure was greatly reduced, and he revealed a smile of having survived a disaster. He knew. He had successfully escaped. He wouldn't die. Swish! The Shadow Executioner did not hesitate at all. After escaping from the heaven-destroying sword formation, he activated the space-piercing hairpin and cut through the night sky at his fastest speed, heading straight for the north. That was right. He fled to the north. It was in the opposite direction of Ji Tianqing and the others. At the same time, it was also where the 11 God Kings' reinforcements were coming from. Swish! In the blink of an eye, the space-piercing hairpin had flown 5,000 miles away from the heaven-destroying sword formation. At this time, Ji Tianqing, Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tiansheng and the rest had just reached the edge of the heaven-destroying sword formation. They had also passed through the gap in the sword formation and chased into the sky outside. Looking in the direction that the space-piercing hairpin had escaped in, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng instinctively gave chase. They also exploded with their fastest speed, chasing after the space-piercing hairpin. Chao Qingyu and Yank were not idle either. They were also desperately chasing after him. However, Ji Tianqing stood in the sky and raised his hand to stop them. There's no need to chase. It's a waste of effort. You won't be able to catch up. Chao Qingyu's expression froze, and he revealed a bitter smile. Yes. The divine weapon of Shadow Executioner should be a king-level upper divine weapon, right? Yank scratched his head and said unwillingly, "Are we just going to watch him escape like this? I can't accept this." Ji Tianqing was more indifferent. He said calmly, "After all, we are not peak God Kings. We can't control everything, and we can't stop Shadow Executioner from escaping. Furthermore, looking at the direction that he escaped in, he should have other intentions. If I'm not wrong, they still have a large group of God King reinforcements rushing over from the north. If we chase after them, it won't be long before we bump into that group of God Kings." Naturally, there was no need to say the rest. If they bumped into that group of God Kings, it was obvious what the outcome would be. Chao Qingyu was inexplicably worried. He asked, "Young master, should we inform those 2 God Kings to stop chasing?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said calmly, "There's no need. They will be back soon." Seeing that he was so confident, Chao Qingyu and Yank had nothing to worry about. As expected, Ji Tianqing had guessed correctly. After a short 30 breaths, the 2 brothers, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tiansheng, returned, panting. Their eyes were somewhat dim, and their expressions were filled with unwillingness and anger. Ji Tianqing, Chao Qingyu, and Yank already knew the result, so they did not ask. However, Jiang Tiansheng was filled with indignation. He could not help but curse, "Damn it. That guy escaped too quickly. If not for that superior king-level divine weapon, we definitely would not have let him escape." Jiang Tianyi did not say anything, but he smiled helplessly. Ji Tianqing comforted him, "It's okay. After this attack, they won't be able to stop us for a long time." Jiang Tianyi thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. Yes. They had a total of 3 divine messengers. Young Master Tianqing killed 2 of them. Divine Messenger Zhaning, who escaped, was also heavily injured. He won't be able to recover in a short period of time. In this way, the God Kings will be like dragons without a leader and will not be much of a threat. At this moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly turned his head and looked to the side of the heaven-destroying sword formation. When he saw a ball of divine light silently flying towards the east, his lips curled into a playful smile. Ha ha ha. I was only focused on chasing after the 3 divine messengers and forgot about him. Chao Qingyu, Yank, and the Jiang brothers all turned their heads to look and discovered that within that ball of divine light was the exhausted divine king White Phoenix. The 4 of them immediately revealed gloating and malicious smiles. Ha ha ha, we forgot about divine king White Phoenix. Tisk tsk. I didn't expect that guy to hide outside the sword formation and not escape. I reckon he still doesn't know what happened inside the sword formation, and even more doesn't know that Ku Yun and divine messenger Xing Xiang are dead. As they spoke, everyone followed Ji Tianqing and flew towards that ball of divine light. Even though White Phoenix was a superior divine king and usually came and went like the wind, as fast as the aurora. But it was different now. He was extremely weak and tired. His flying speed was extremely slow. Furthermore, he sensed that Ji Tianqing and the rest were not far away. He was afraid of alerting them and could only escape silently. In this way, his speed was even slower. But even so, he still could not escape from Ji Tianqing's palms. After a short 30 breaths, Ji Tianqing led Chao Qingyu, Jiang Tianyi, and the rest to block divine king White Phoenix's path. Chapter 3491. If you want to kill me, do as you please. Under the night sky, divine king White Phoenix stubbornly raised his head and closed his eyes. He did not look at the expressions of the people around him. His pale and weak face was filled with arrogance and unyieldingness. Even though he knew that he was destined to not be able to escape tonight. If he fell into Ji Tianqing's hands, he would definitely die. However, he was an upper-level divine king, a renowned ruler of a region. Even if he were to die, he would die with an unyielding spirit and an air of arrogance. He would not bow and scrape. However, the butcher's knife did not descend as he expected. Jiang Tianyi, Jiang Tianxing, Chao Qingyu and Yank surrounded him. They crossed their arms and looked on coldly. Their expressions were somewhat mocking, but no one made a move. Ji Tianqing also looked at him coldly, but did not make a move. After a short silence, divine king White Phoenix opened his eyes. He looked around and then his gaze fell on Ji Tianqing. Why didn't you kill me? Ji Tianqing looked at him and raised his eyebrows. He asked, why should I kill you? Do you want to die? Bai Feng frowned and a self-mocking cold smile appeared on his face. He said in a low voice, I served the 3 divine envoys and followed them to kill you. Don't you have the right to kill me? Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head lightly. He said, strictly speaking, you and I don't have any deep grudges. When we first fought, you were only following the orders of divine envoy Xing Xiang. This time, you were just watching the battle and did not attack me at all. To be more precise, you're just leading the way. Leading the way. Bai Feng frowned again and his expression was a little strange. Ji Tianqing maintained his smile and looked at the 3rd eye on his forehead. He said, if not for the Phoenix clan's eye of annihilation, how would the 3 divine envoys know where I was? If not for your guidance, they would still be guarding the Heaven Dragon Pass in the Red Dragon region. How could they appear here? Bai Feng's tightly furrowed brows relaxed. Her face was filled with vigilance and wariness as she asked, so, you didn't kill me because of my divine eye of annihilation? You want me to pledge my loyalty to you and work for you? Ji Tianqing shook his head and said blandly, the annihilation divine eye is indeed a special inheritance of the Phoenix kind, and I can't have it. But if I want to cultivate the divine eye secret technique, there is an eye technique even more miraculous than the divine eye of annihilation. As for your loyalty, I won't force you. It's all up to you. I won't kill you. Firstly, there is no deep hatred between us. Secondly, you are a disciple of the Phoenix clan. Bai Feng frowned again. After pondering for a moment, she asked, "Are you afraid of the Phoenix clan's power?" "No. You even dared to kill the oracle and offend the God Emperor. Why would you be afraid of offending the Phoenix clan?" When everyone heard this, the Jiang brothers were already somewhat impatient. Jiang Tianxing, in particular, said unhappily, "Bai Feng, are you a blockhead? Mr. Tianxing is a senior expert of our Jiang clan, one generation higher than our clan leader. Do you think he would be afraid of the Phoenix clan? He loves the clan because he loves the clan. He doesn't want to see the clans killing each other. Moreover, as a disciple of the clan, you don't think about how to restore the glory of the clan. Instead, you work for the oracle. You are a disgrace to the clan's disciples." Jiang Tianyi also nodded in agreement. He said earnestly, "Divine King Bai Feng, although you and I don't have any relationship, we don't even know each other. But we have all heard of each other's names, right? Whether you admit it or not, the 18 ancient clans should unite and fight against this era together. At least, we should have the pride and glory of our clan. How can we bow and scrape before the God Emperor? Bow and scrape before the God Emperor?" Bai Feng raised her eyebrows and a mocking expression appeared on her face. She sneered and said, "Which of the 18 ancient clans didn't submit to the God Emperor? Isn't this bowing and scrape before the God Emperor?" "No." Jiang Tianxing clenched his fists and roared hot-bloodedly, "That's not submission. It's a temporary compromise to preserve our strength. But as long as the 18 ancient clans are united, we won't be disintegrated." "He he he he." Bai Feng sneered again and said in a playful tone, "Wake up, all of you. Don't immerse yourself in the glory of the past and lose yourself. Since 1,000 years ago, the world and era have changed. 1,000 years ago, and even the entire ancient era, the great clans looked down on the world. But now, it's the era of the God Emperor. No one can stop him. Even if the 18 ancient clans unite, it's impossible to fight against the God Emperor. It's like throwing an egg against a rock. Because you stubborn frogs in a well can't imagine how great and terrifying the God Emperor is." When Bai Feng said this, she raised her head and looked at the sky. Her eyes were filled with respect and worship. Seeing her expression, Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing clenched their fists. Their hearts surged with anger. "Bastard, you've forgotten your ancestors. Don't forget your identity as a disciple of the Phoenix clan. The ancient clans have been passed down for tens of thousands of years. They were once the top forces of the God realm and looked down on the common people. So, every disciple of the ancient clans had their own honor and pride. Even after 1,000 years, this pride had never disappeared. But the Jiang brothers didn't understand. How could Bai Feng change so completely? Ji Tianqing saw through the clues and frowned at Bai Feng. He asked, "You've seen the Azura God Emperor with your own eyes, right?" Bai Feng was stunned. Frowning, she thought carefully for a moment before shaking her head, "No, I haven't. With my status and strength, I don't have the right to see the true face of the God Emperor. Even on the day of the Domain Lord's appointment, I only saw the projection of the Azura God Emperor's clone." After saying this, she looked at Ji Tianqing with a serious expression and said, "Tianqing, I'll say the same thing. Accept your fate and give up on your unrealistic fantasies. The strength of the God Emperor has long surpassed the God King realm and stands at the peak of the divine Tao. You've never seen him, so you can't imagine how terrifying he is. Even if the 18 ancient clans were to join forces, they wouldn't be able to touch the God Emperor, let alone you." Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows thoughtfully. The Azura God Emperor has taken the last step and surpassed the God King realm to reach the peak of the divine Tao. Could it be that he has understood the secret of eternal life and has mastered the heavenly Tao? Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing didn't think much of it. The two brothers looked at each other angrily. Seventh brother, I can't hold it in anymore. I really want to beat him up. Me too. Then, let's do it. The two brothers exchanged their opinions. Then, they smiled angrily and raised their fists and legs. In the next moment, Bai Feng felt her vision go black as a storm of attacks came down on her. Bam! 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 After a series of violent and dull punches and kicks, Bai Feng, who was already very weak, was beaten black and blue. She fainted on the spot. Ji Tianqing also felt bored. He waved his hand and said, "Tie her up and take her away." Chapter 3492. Jiang Tianyi controlled the palace and flew across the sky as fast as lightning towards the south. Jiang Tianxing was recuperating in a secret chamber. Ji Tianqing also occupied a secret chamber. He took out the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and entered the distorted spacetime to cultivate. He wasn't injured in the previous battle and didn't use much divine power. However, he had to refine celestial body in divine envoy Ku Yun's godhead fragments as soon as possible to increase his strength. Chao Qingyu and Yank didn't need to be mentioned. After entering the palace, the two of them returned to the divine worship and the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda to heal their injuries. There was only silence in the temporary imperial residence. Only Bai Feng was still unconscious. She was lying unconscious in the palace. After he was knocked out by the Jiang brothers, everyone worked together to use divine powers to seal his divine power and godhead. This way, Bai Feng would have to sleep for a long time before waking up. Even if he woke up, he would be like an ordinary person and wouldn't be able to use his divine power and divine sense. He was basically no threat. Originally, with Jiang Tianqing's personality, he wanted to kill Bai Feng to vent his anger. In his eyes, Bai Feng was a servile and spineless traitor. Not only did he betray the Phoenix clan, but he also betrayed the 18 ancient clans. However, Jiang Tianyi thought about it and stopped Jiang Tianxing. He could tell that Ji Tianqing didn't have the intention to kill Bai Feng. Perhaps there was another reason for leaving Bai Feng alive. Since it was Ji Tianqing's intention, Jiang Tianxing naturally wouldn't disobey and let Bai Feng go. Next, the palace rushed toward the God's Guide Grotto Heaven in the south at the fastest speed. A few hours later. In the central region of the Hengshan Empire. The disheveled divine envoy Shadow Executioner panted as he flew over a mountain range. His clothes and hair were drenched and his body was covered in blood. He looked rather miserable. For the past 4 hours, he had been using the sky-piercing hairpin to escape with all his might. However, using the sky-piercing hairpin consumed a huge amount of divine power. Shadow Executioner Shadow was already injured and his strength had decreased. He had only held on for 4 hours, but he could no longer hold on. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing and Jiang Tianyi didn't chase after him. Shadow Executioner Shadow Executioner Shadow Executioner hairpin and slowed down. At this moment, in the northern sky, a dazzling divine light galloped over. Still thousands of miles away, divine emissary Shadow Executioner discovered that there was a divine worship within the divine light. Coincidentally, he recognized that divine worship. It was the divine ship that the 11 God Kings were on. Stop! Stop! Divine envoy Shadow Executioner hurriedly rushed forward, waving his arms as he shouted in a low and hoarse voice. The God King controlling the divine worship immediately discovered divine envoy Shadow Executioner and recognized him. Thus, the divine worship quickly decelerated and stopped in midair. Swoosh! Swish swish swish! After the cabin door of the divine ship opened, 10 divine kings appeared one after another and flew to the side of divine envoy Shadow Executioner. Seeing Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner in such a miserable state, all the Divine Kings were stunned, their faces filled with disbelief. "Sir Messenger, what happened to you? Shadow Executioner, how did you suffer such heavy injuries? What about the other 2 Divine Envoys? Why are you alone? What the hell is going on? Are we late?" The 10 Divine Kings were shocked, anxious, and confused. Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner looked around and saw that no one was gloating, mocking, or joking. Only then did he relax slightly. He waved his hand and said in a low voice, "This is not the place to talk. Let's return to the divine worship first." The Divine Kings hurriedly nodded in agreement. "Yes, yes, yes. Sir Messenger, quickly return to the divine worship to rest. Sir Messenger, please." Soon, everyone returned to the main hall of the divine worship. Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner sat at the head and took 2 king-level divine pills, silently circulating his energy to suppress his injuries. The 10 Divine Kings all stood in the main hall, looking at him with concern. 15 minutes later, Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner's injuries stabilized. He then said, "This envoy and 2 other divine envoys stopped those traitors at the southern border of the Hengshan Empire. I didn't expect that those traitors had the help of the Jiang clan and were so powerful. We fought a great battle and injured those traitors and the Jiang clan disciples. Unfortunately, the 2 divine envoys, Xing Xiang and Ku Yun, were killed by the traitor Tianqing." Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner's voice was low, filled with pain and anger. When the 10 Divine Kings heard this, they were stunned. Their faces were filled with shock and disbelief. The 2 divine envoys were killed. How is this possible? The strength of those renegades is actually formidable to such an extent. It's over. The 2 divine envoys were killed. Who else can kill those traitors? Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner, why don't you send an order to Heaven Dragon Pass and gather all the divine kings so that we can work together to kill those traitors? Yes. Since those renegades are so powerful, we have to work together. Only then will we be absolutely safe. Every divine king felt a strong sense of danger. They were nervous and worried. Before they came, everyone was full of confidence. Now, they were not confident and were filled with fear. Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner thought for a moment and nodded, "Those traitors will definitely continue south. With our current manpower, we may not be able to kill them. I will immediately send a message to Heaven Dragon Pass and gather all the divine kings. Even if the 2 divine envoys were sacrificed, we cannot give up on killing them. No matter what, we must kill those traitors to appease the souls of the 2 divine envoys." The 10 divine kings nodded in agreement. Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner frowned and thought for a moment. He waved his hand and said, "All right, everyone leave. I need a secret room." The divine kings quickly left. One of them came forward and arranged a secret room for him. After a moment, Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner entered the secret room to heal his injuries. All the divine kings left. The secret room was dimly lit and silent. Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner was not in a hurry to heal. He first took out a communication jade slip and sent an order to Heaven Dragon Pass. Then, he frowned and muttered to himself, "This assassination not only mobilized more than 30 divine kings, it also alarmed more than 20 regions. Xing Xiang and Ku Yun are dead. There is no news of divine king Bai Feng. She was probably killed by those traitors." This matter not only implicated the Feng clan, but also the Jiang clan's disciples. Such an important matter will probably spread to the various regions very quickly. There is no way to hide or cover it up. It seems that I can only report the truth to His Majesty the God Emperor and let His Majesty the God Emperor make the decision. Divine Envoy Shadow Executioner came to this decision after careful consideration. Before this, he had the same idea as Ku Yun and Divine Envoy Xing Xiang. A traitor like Ji Tianqing had appeared in the boundless heaven continent. They wanted to kill Ji Tianqing and the others before the matter got out of hand. Only then could they answer to His Majesty the God Emperor and not show their incompetence. But now, the matter had gotten out of hand and was beyond their ability to handle. Not to mention the region masters, even Xing Xiang and divine envoy Ku Yun were killed. He did not dare to hide it anymore. He could only ask Azura God Emperor. Chapter 3493. After thinking for a while, Shadow Executioner God Emissary took out a communication jade slip. He reported the cause, process, and result of the entire matter in detail. Including the 2 Jiang clan disciples participating in the battle and the disappearance of White Phoenix Divine King. As a god emissary who patrolled the world, he naturally knew the strength of the 18 ancient clans, as well as the relationship between the ancient clans and the god emperor. This level of conflict and confrontation was not something he could decide. It had to be handled by the god emperor. Of course. Shadow Executioner God Emissary temporarily did not have the qualifications to directly send a message to the Azura God Emperor. This communication jade slip was for the patrol commander. That's right. The 49 patrol commanders were directly under the 2 commanders. The 2 patrol commanders were the Azura God Emperor's trusted aides and right-hand men. Only they had the qualifications to meet the God Emperor. Especially Vice Commander Jin Shuang, who guarded the God Emperor's palace and the living being altar all year round, receiving news from the various regions. Whoosh! A golden light flashed. The communication jade slip flew out of the divine ship and disappeared into the sky. After sending the message, Shadow Executioner God Emissary let out a sigh of relief. He looked at the sky outside the window and muttered to himself, although the God Emperor will definitely severely punish me when he finds out about this. This matter will also become a failure in my life. But Ku Yun and Xing Xiang were sacrificed. Only I survived. This is already a great fortune. As for those traitors, their time of death has come. Soon, everything will be over. After saying this, Shadow Executioner God Emissary finally felt relieved. He collected his thoughts and began to heal himself. In the center of the boundless heaven continent, there was a blessed land that ordinary people didn't know about. It was located high up in the sky. This was a small world and also the most sacred and dignified place in the boundless heaven continent. Because this was the Azura God Emperor's cave residence. The famous God Emperor's palace that only existed in legends was within this blessed land. At this time, Vice Commander Jin Shuang was guarding the living being altar as usual, waiting to receive news from the various regions at any time. For the past few hundred years, he had been repeating the same routine. It was dull and tedious. Fortunately, he could still cultivate while guarding the living altar. He only needed to deal with it when there was news from the living being's altar. However, today was different. While he was cultivating, nothing happened to the sage's altar. However, a beam of golden light descended from the sky. Shwa! The golden light dissipated, revealing a special communication jade slip. Jin Shuang glanced at it and recognized that it was the special communication jade slip used by the inspectors. Which patrol envoy sent this? Could it be that there's a problem in one of the domains? This thought flashed through Jin Shuang's mind. She reached out and picked up the jade slip, reading the information inside. A moment later, he finished reading the contents of the jade slip and was stunned. His expression became dignified and angry, and his eyes flashed with a biting cold killing intent. Damn it! Zhao Ning is such an idiot. How could he wait until now to report such a big incident? Jin Shuang's fists were clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. Her entire body was bursting with anger and killing intent. If the Shadow Executioner was in front of him, he would definitely beat him up. However, Jin Shuang took a deep breath and quickly suppressed the anger in her heart. He realized the seriousness of the matter and didn't dare to act on his own. He hurriedly flew to the god palace 100 li away. 100 breaths later. He knocked on the door of a secret room and saw a middle-aged god race wearing scarlet-red armor. He was tall and sturdy and had a domineering aura. "Lord Commander, I am very sorry to disturb your secluded cultivation. However, just now, the Shadow Executioner reported a very serious matter to me. You must take a look." Jin Shuang looked at the cold and dignified middle-aged god race sitting on the god jade throne. He bowed and said in a serious tone. This middle-aged god race wearing scarlet-red armor was the commander of the 49 inspectors, one of the Azura God Emperor's right-hand men. His strength had long reached the 9th layer of the Divine King realm, Qi Yan. Although there was only a difference of one word between the commander and the deputy commander. However, there was still a huge gap between their statuses. Otherwise, Qi Yan wouldn't be able to freely stay in the secret room and cultivate. On the other hand, Jin Shuang could only guard the living being's altar year after year. Qi Yan didn't speak. He only nodded and reached out to take the communication jade slip from Jin Shuang. His divine sense entered the jade slip. The Shadow Executioner's low voice immediately sounded in Qi Yan's mind. After hearing a few words, Qi Yan's brow furrowed and his face became as cold as ice. After a while, Qi Yan finished listening to the Shadow Executioner's report and retracted his divine sense. His face was cold and his body emitted a cold killing intent. He sneered, "In almost 1,000 years, there has never been such a big matter. A few daring traitors, wantonly killing those domain lords is one thing. But even the Jiang clan of the God Attraction Grotto Heaven is involved. Ha ha ha, those 18 ancient clans, after keeping a low profile for 1,000 years, are they finally going to bare their fangs?" Jin Shuang nodded in agreement and said in a firm tone, "Back then, they were cowards, not daring to fight against the God Emperor. It's laughable that they thought that with 1,000 years of patience and accumulation, they had the qualifications to challenge the God Emperor. However, they will never be able to imagine just how powerful His Majesty the God Emperor has become." Qi Yan nodded slightly and said in a cold voice, "In the past 1,000 years, the ancient clans have been very docile. Even the God Emperor couldn't find a reason to exterminate them. Now, this is the perfect opportunity. The God Emperor can start with the Jiang clan and then eliminate the other clans one by one. But unfortunately, the God Emperor has already left the God realm and went to the outer realms to comprehend the Great Tao. This matter can only be handled by us." Jin Shuang knew that the Azura God Emperor hadn't shown himself for 1,000 years and was most likely in secluded cultivation. But he didn't expect the Azura God Emperor to leave the God realm. He thought to himself, "Qi Yan knows where the God Emperor went, but I don't. Is this the difference between our statuses?" Although his heart was a bit sour, he didn't show it on his face and cupped his hands. "Commander, please give me your instructions." Qi Yan frowned and thought for a moment, then said in a serious tone, "This matter isn't too big, but it isn't small either. If it doesn't involve the ancient clans, you just need to take people to kill those traitors and the matter will be resolved. However, since it involves the ancient clans, you still need to be careful. How about this? I need to guard the God Emperor's palace and listen to the orders of the God Emperor, so I can't go out. You can personally take people to kill those traitors. If necessary, you can mobilize all the domain lords and godly kings. As for the ancient clans, for now, we should focus on suppressing them. It's not good to directly fight them." Without a doubt, Qi Yan gave this difficult task to Jin Shuang. Jin Shuang held his breath, but on the surface, he couldn't refute and could only follow orders. Chapter 3494. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. The Palace of Heavens will had long left the Hengshan region and crossed over a region. Ever since that battle and the death of the two divine envoys, the journey had been peaceful. No one dared to intercept the palace of heaven's will. Even though the journey was peaceful, Jiang Tianyi did not dare to be careless. He knew that divine envoy Shadow Executioner would not let the matter rest. He would definitely gather more divine envoys and divine kings to intercept the palace of heaven's will. Therefore, Jiang Tianyi was always tense. He only had one goal now. That was to return to the divine attraction grotto heaven as soon as possible and bring Ji Tianqing back to the Jiang clan. As long as he completed this mission, he would have no more worries. As for whether Ji Tianqing's killing of the two divine envoys would incur the God Emperor's wrath and be personally hunted down by the God Emperor, this was not in his consideration at all. In any case, he was like all the other Jiang clan disciples. He did not have much respect for the Azura God Emperor. At the same time, Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion in the distorted spacetime for 2 years. In these 2 years, he had refined Xingxiang and Divine Envoy Ku Yun's Divine Spark fragments. Not only had his skills improved greatly, but his strength had also increased by 2 times. The number of Divine Tao laws he had mastered had also increased by a few dozen. He was not far from 500. After refining the Divine Spark fragments, Ji Tianqing did not remain idle. He continued to cultivate the heaven-punishing divine art. As his strength increased, his understanding of the heaven-punishing divine art also deepened. He had already thought about how to cultivate the heaven-punishing divine art after breaking through to the intermediate divine king level. His current goal was to recover to the 4th level of the divine king realm before entering the divine attraction grotto heaven. Once he became an intermediate divine king, it would be easier for him to do things after entering the Jiang clan. On the other side, Yang was also cultivating in seclusion under the bloody flame sacred tree. After 2 years of recuperation, his injuries had long since recovered. Now, he was cultivating diligently to improve his strength. Not only Yang, but Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Bai Long, and the others were also cultivating under the sacred tree. Everyone's strength and realm were constantly increasing. Only Yun Yao was in an awkward situation. She had long reached the peak of the God Monarch realm, but she still could not see any hope of breaking through to the God King realm. While this made her feel depressed, it also confirmed Ji Tianqing's conjecture. Most likely, she would need to fuse with the 7th divine pearl before she could break through to the God King realm. The first 2 months of their journey were peaceful and quiet. Not only was there no one intercepting the palace of heaven's will, there wasn't even anyone following them. Just like that, the palace of heavens will successfully crossed 4 regions. However, 60 days later, when the palace of heavens will entered the 5th region, Jiang Tianyi felt that something was wrong. This place was called the Yuanshan region, located in the south of the boundless heaven continent. It was not far from the south wind region where the divine attraction cave was located. There was only one region between them. In other words, Jiang Tianyi would be able to bring Ji Tianqing back to the Jiang clan in at most a month. However, after entering the Yuanshan region, Jiang Tianyi faintly felt that he was being watched. Even though there was no abnormal situation around the palace of heaven's will. He used his divine sense to investigate many times but did not discover any experts approaching. However, the feeling of being watched, like a thorn in his back, always lingered around him. Jiang Tianyi had a premonition that the revenge that should come would come soon. In the past 2 months, I also asked the Jiang clan spies and my friends in the Shimi cave heaven to inquire about various news. From their feedback, it seems that the Shadow Executioner emissary did not do much. He only gathered more than 20 god kings and continued to chase south. There should still be some distance between them and us. Even if he sent scouts and spies to keep an eye on our whereabouts. As long as he and those god kings do not catch up to us, there is nothing to worry about. Thinking of this, the sense of urgency in Jiang Tianyi's heart lessened by a lot. But it was a pity. As the days passed, the uneasy feeling of being watched grew stronger and stronger. Jiang Tianyi had a strong premonition. The people secretly following him might not be the shadow executioner emissaries' spies. Moreover, this group of people should not be waiting for long and would soon appear and take action. As expected, reality proved that Jiang Tianyi's guess was correct. 13 days later, just as Tianyi Palace was about to leave the Yuanshan region, several God King experts suddenly appeared, blocking the palace's path. Swoosh! Swoosh swoosh! Those were 6 God race experts. The person in the lead was an old man in a purple robe with white hair and a beard. This person was skinny and had a dark face, but his eyes were bright and full of spirit. His entire body exuded an arrogant and domineering aura. Most importantly, this purple-robed old man was a high God King. Following behind the purple-robed old man were 3 God King experts in different attire. One of them was a tall and muscular old man in a gray robe with 6 wings. He was also a high God King. The other 2 middle-aged God race experts also had dignified appearances and extraordinary auras. Their strength was at the 6th level of the God King realm, but they were in peak condition, only a step away from the high God King realm. Other than these 4 God Kings, Jiang Tianyi's gaze landed on the 5th person. It was a young God race expert wearing a white robe, his hair tied up in a bun. He looked very handsome. His appearance was very familiar, but his face was filled with a mocking sneer, and his eyes flashed with killing intent. The 6th person was beside the young God race expert. Jiang Tianyi was also familiar with him. When he saw this person's face, Jiang Tianyi was stunned. Chenlan. Yan Shangao. Why is it you? Without a doubt. The 6 God Kings who appeared to block Tianyi Palace were all experts of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. Based on their attire and appearance, Jiang Tianyi immediately guessed their identities. Left Guardian Qin Dong, 2nd Elder Su Zhang, 6th Elder Gu Shi, and 7th Elder Lu Qingsong of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. Without much thought, Jiang Tianyi immediately guessed the reason. After Chenlan and Yan Shangao escaped from the Gold Laurel Palace, they must have headed south towards the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. Along the way, Chenlan must have sent a message to his master, Qin Dong, to explain the situation. When Qin Dong heard that his disciple had been humiliated, he was naturally furious and brought the 3 elders to seek revenge. In the past half a month, Jiang Tianyi had always felt that someone was spying on them. Without a doubt, it was related to the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. As expected, Chenlan stared at Jiang Tianyi with a cold smile and said mockingly, Jiang Tianyi, I didn't expect you to have such good eyesight to recognize the left guardian and the elders. Since that's the case, you should know our motive, right? Humph. Jiang Tianyi snorted and said with disdain, back in the Gold Laurel Palace, we had a fair fight. Since you lost, you had to fulfill the bet. I didn't expect you to be so despicable as to ask your elders to seek revenge. Chenlan, you don't deserve to be a disciple of the clan. Hearing those words, Chenlan frowned deeply, and her expression turned gloomy. But before he could say anything, the left guardian Qin Dong, who was the leader of the group, shouted coldly in a dignified tone, Junior of the Jiang clan, it's not up to you to judge my disciple. It was the Jiang clan's elders who disregarded their status and humiliated my disciple first. Today, you must give me an explanation. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving this place. Chapter 3495. Qin Dong's anger and protectiveness were evident at this moment. He didn't care who was right or wrong. He only knew that his most valued disciple, Chenlan, had been humiliated by the Jiang clan. Furthermore, he had lost the primordial jade marrow that he had given him. To Chenlan, this was a huge loss. To Qin Dong, it was also a huge humiliation. Therefore, he definitely couldn't take this lying down. He had to get back at them. Most importantly, Qianlan repeated Ji Tianqing's words to him word for word. Yan Shangao, not to mention an old man like you, even if your sect leader, Su Bai Lian, was here, he wouldn't dare to be impudent to this king. Who am I? Strictly speaking, the two of you have to call me old master. It was this sentence. Back then, it had shocked Qianlan and Yan Shangao. At the same time, it had also made them very confused and humiliated. Qianlan couldn't tell if this sentence was true or false, so he told Qin Dong. After Qin Dong heard it, he was furious and filled with killing intent. An unknown young man was actually so arrogant. He actually dared to call himself an elder of the 100 Refinement Ancient sect and didn't even put the sect leader in his eyes. This was simply too ridiculous, too lawless. No matter what, Qin Dong had to find that arrogant fellow and punish him severely. Otherwise, where would the 100 Refinement Ancient sect's face go? It was because of these reasons that Qin Dong personally brought the 3 elders to intercept Jiang Tianyi and the rest. Swoosh! Qin Dong used his eyes to signal, and the 3 elders, Qianlan, and the rest quickly dispersed. Everyone surrounded the Palace of Heavens with a murderous aura. Jiang Tianyi stood at the entrance of the palace and glared at Qin Dong. He asked in a low voice, "Protector Qin, what are you trying to do? Don't forget, I'm the 9th young master of the Jiang clan. If you do anything to us, it's a declaration of war against the Jiang clan. The alliance and agreement between the clans will also be broken because of you." Jiang Tianyi was neither servile nor overbearing. His tone carried anger and warning. Qin Dong didn't think much of it. He stroked his beard and sneered. He. What bullshit 9th young master. In front of me, he's just a brat who's still wet behind the ears. I will naturally not break the agreement of the clan alliance. After all, I won't kill you today. I'm just here to teach you a lesson on behalf of the Jiang clan and make you pay the price you deserve. What do you mean? Jiang Tianyi shouted coldly as he clenched his fists. Qin Dong was still stroking his beard. His seemingly thin and old body emitted a domineering aura that soared into the sky. It's simple. Hand over the 2 weapon refinement geniuses and bow to Qianlan in apology. Then, I'll spare you. Jiang Tianyi's body trembled, and then he sneered, he. After talking for so long, you're here to snatch people away. Why do you need to find those high-sounding excuses? Qin Dong disdained to argue and said in a deep voice, I don't want to repeat myself. You only have 10 breaths of time to consider. Of course, you should have thought of the consequences of refusing. Without waiting for him to finish, Jiang Tianyi puffed out his chest and said resolutely, Qin Dong, you're delusional. Even if I die here, I will never hand over those 2 people, much less apologize to Qianlan. Very good. Qin Dong frowned and sneered with a dark expression, since you're so stubborn, don't blame me for being impolite. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly raised both hands and punched at Jiang Tianyi, who was hundreds of thousands of feet away. Whoosh! 2 mountain-sized fists of divine fire, carrying hundreds of divine Tao laws, smashed toward Jiang Tianyi with the power to destroy the world. At this moment, the surrounding thousands of miles were covered in fire, and the air froze. The sky for thousands of miles was disturbed by divine Tao laws, and many spatial cracks appeared, revealing the pitch-black void. The Palace of Heavens was also violently shaken by the violent divine power. Jiang Tianyi and the palace were about to be hit by the fists. At this critical moment, Jiang Tianyi roared angrily and proudly went up to meet them. Break! He gripped the divine sword with both hands and unleashed all of his power, slashing out 2 giant swords. Kaboom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the 2 giant swords struck the fists of fire at the same time, creating a firestorm that blotted out the sky. However, the 2 giant swords shattered, but the fists of fire remained intact, only weakened a little. Bam! The two fists of fire hit Jiang Tianyi at the same time, sending him flying back and crashing into the palace's entrance. Plop! There was another loud explosion. Jiang Tianyi rolled on the ground for dozens of times, spilling blood all over the ground before stopping in the palace. The palace of heavens will also violently shook, bursting with divine light. Obviously, Jiang Tianyi wasn't Qin Dong's match at all. He couldn't even take one move. 8th level Divine King Realm. You haven't fought for more than 200 years, and you've broken through. He struggled to get up, using his sleeve to wipe the blood off his face as he stared coldly at Qin Dong. The 100 Refinement Ancient Sect was the Jiang clan's old enemy. Therefore, Jiang Tianyi knew the key figures of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect. But he didn't expect that the left guardian Qin Dong, who had always been at the peak of the 7th stage, had broken through to the 8th stage. This was definitely not good news for the Jiang clan. As expected, Qin Dong stroked his beard and sneered, "That's right. Just 10 years ago, I broke through. So, little fellow, you'd better hand them over and apologize to Qianlan. Although I won't kill you, I'll make you wish you were dead." Chapter 3496. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing teamed up to face Qin Dong. Jiang Tianyi didn't have time to ask Jiang Tianxing why he was here. He only knew. If he couldn't block Qin Dong's attack, he and Jiang Tianxing would be in trouble. Even if they didn't die, they would be severely injured. Kaboom! In the next moment, dozens of dazzling sword lights clashed with the giant palm, creating a deafening explosion. It was like thunder, echoing through the sky. The dazzling sword lights collapsed, and more than half of the giant palm was shattered. Tens of millions of fragments of divine light shot out in all directions like a violent storm. Jiang Tianyi and Jiang Tianxing were both hit by the palm. With a muffled sound, the two of them flew back in a sorry state. While he was still in midair, he opened his mouth and spat out a scarlet arrow of blood that scattered across the sky. Plop! Plop! Then, the two brothers crashed into the palace at almost the same time. After rolling dozens of times, they fell to the ground. Without a doubt, they were both injured by Qin Dong. However, Jiang Tianxing's injuries were more serious. Not only did his divine sword fly out of his hand, his right arm was broken, and there was a huge hole in his chest. He was covered in blood, and blood was foaming from his mouth and nose. He was on the verge of losing consciousness. On the other hand, Jiang Tianyi was only dizzy. His right arm was broken, and his strength was greatly reduced. The blood in his body kept churning. He struggled in the air for a while before flying back to the palace. As for Jiang Tianxing, he fell down from the sky and smashed into the ruins with a loud thud, raising a cloud of dust into the air. This scene made Jiang Tianyi's expression extremely ugly. His eyes were extremely serious. The elders of the 100 Refinement Ancient Sect, Qianlan, and Yan Shangao all sneered. Qin Dong looked down at Jiang Tianyi from above and said in an indifferent tone, "Brat, don't put up any more resistance. It's meaningless. Hand over the two blacksmithing geniuses and apologize to Qianlan. Also, hand over the human youth called Tianxing, and this matter will be over." Jiang Tianyi was still unwilling to admit defeat. He looked up at Qin Dong and said firmly, "I said, don't even think about it." Qin Dong sneered. "I said I wouldn't kill you, but since you're so stubborn, I don't mind crippling you and sending you back to the Jiang clan like a dead dog." To Qin Dong, this wasn't a difficult thing to do. Plus, he definitely had the guts to do it. However, he didn't expect Jiang Tianyi to just stare at him. Jiang Tianxing struggled to crawl out of the deep pit in the ruins. His face was covered in blood as he roared, "Qin Dong, you damned old man. As the left protector of the 100 Refinements Ancient Sect, you actually personally attacked us juniors, Do you think our Jiang clan has no one? If you have the guts, look for our Jiang clan's protector. I guarantee that he will wring the heads of your entire family. Qin Dong looked down at Jiang Tiansheng, who was in the ruins, and grinned coldly. I'm bullying a junior. Where? Didn't he also bully my disciple, Chen. It was your Jiang clan who was shameless first. What right do you have to criticize me? Then, he squinted his eyes. His body emitted a murderous aura. Also, you're too uneducated. I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of the Jiang clan. Then, he waved his right hand and slashed out a crescent-shaped blade light. Whoosh! The blade light fell from the sky and hit Jiang Tianyi before he could dodge it. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking was heard. Blood splashed out, and an intact right arm flew into the sky, then fell to the ground with a thud. Jiang Tianyi's body stiffened. He lowered his head with difficulty and looked at his empty right shoulder. There was a clean cut on his right shoulder. Pale golden bone stubble could be seen. Blood was still gushing out. He was furious and scolded instinctively. However, the pain hit him. He blacked out and collapsed. Plop, another muffled sound. Jiang Tianyi fell unconscious. Dust flew up. Seeing this, Jiang Tianyi was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. He roared crazily. Qin Dong! You deserve to die. The Jiang clan will remember this. We'll pay you back double. While roaring, Jiang Tianyi didn't charge at Qin Dong. He was no match for Qin Dong. He couldn't avenge Jiang Tianyi. Even if he did, he would be humiliating himself. He landed in the ruins and picked up the unconscious Jiang Tianyi. He picked up his bloodied and dusty arm and flew back to the palace. Swoosh! He entered the palace and placed Jiang Tianyi on the ground. He was about to send a message to the Jiang clan for help. At the same time, he wanted to close the palace's door. Even if he couldn't escape, he had to try his best. If he couldn't escape, he had to hide in the palace and hold on for a while. However, Qin Dong seemed to have seen through his thoughts. Before he could close the gate of the palace, 3 dazzling lights flew in from the gate. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! In an instant, 3 dazzling sword lights appeared in front of Jiang Tianyi, aiming for his head and chest. At this critical moment, Jiang Tianyi could only hold the divine sword in front of him. Bang bang bang! With a dull sound, Jiang Tianyi was sent flying again. Like a rag doll that had been crushed and covered in wrinkles, he rolled and smashed into the depths of the hall. He knocked down a few pillars, scattering debris all over the floor. The floor of the main hall was also sprayed with shocking bloodstains. He rolled into a corner of the palace, his body twitching. Large amounts of blood gushed out of his body and spread out. This time, the injuries he suffered were too severe. It was difficult for him to even turn over and get up. His eyes closed and his consciousness blurred. He was on the verge of fainting. At the same time, Qin Dong walked down from the sky and landed in front of the palace's entrance. Ha ha ha, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. You overestimate yourself. Qin Dong sneered disdainfully. He stepped into the palace and was about to enter the main hall. Jiang Tianyi looked on helplessly, unable to stop him. His mouth opened and closed as blood gushed out. He let out a muffled voice, cursing Qin Dong. But Qin Dong didn't care. He didn't even put him in his eyes. He wanted to enter the palace and personally take away the 2 forging geniuses and capture Ji Tianxing, who called himself an elder of the Jiang clan. However, just as Qin Dong's right foot stepped into the palace, an invisible divine pressure came from the depths of the palace, as if a peak divine king had descended. A low, dignified, and cold voice sounded in everyone's ears. Qin Dong, after 1,000 years, you're still a trash who bullies the weak and fears the strong. How sad. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3497. It was the voice of a young man. It was cold and majestic. It was filled with disdain and disdain. Jiang Tianxing was unconscious and could not hear it. Jiang Tianyi was on the verge of losing consciousness and could hear it clearly. However, he felt that the voice was familiar yet unfamiliar. As for Qin Dong, who was standing at the entrance of the palace, his body stiffened. He was stunned. At first, he felt that the voice was familiar. In the next instant, when he searched his memories and recalled the voice, endless fear surged in his mind. In an instant, his mind and reason were filled with endless fear. The familiar scenes from more than 1100 years ago that had been imprinted in his soul and would never be forgotten for the rest of his life reappeared in his mind. Instantly, Qin Dong felt a chill run down his spine. He was completely stunned. His face turned ghastly pale, his eyes opened wide as he stared fixedly at the depths of the gloomy hall, and his mind went completely blank. He was not the only one. In the sky outside the palace, the figures of Su Zhang, Gu Shi, and Lu Qingsong stiffened as well. Their eyes suddenly opened wide as they revealed expressions that were filled with terror and astonishment. They couldn't believe that the strange yet familiar voice had appeared again. What followed was memories from 1,000 years ago, which surged endlessly in their minds. Scenes of swords and sabers, mountains of corpses and seas of blood. The humiliating scenes caused the three of them to tremble and break out in cold sweat. Back then, it was not only the three of them. It was also a calamity for the left guardian Qin Dong and the entire 100 Refinement ancient sect. That day, the white-robed, black-haired human stepped into the 100 Refinement ancient sect. He used his sword to slaughter the entire 100 Refinement ancient sect. Regardless of whether it was the young prodigies or the respected almighties. Even the sect master and the supreme elder submitted to the white-robed young man's sword. They trembled like ants and dead dogs. The proud supreme elder could not stand the humiliation and self-detonated on the spot. In the end, more than half of the 100 Refinement ancient sect's cave was destroyed. The mountains and rivers within 100,000 miles were reduced to ruins. However, the white-robed young man was still unharmed. That day was the nightmare of all the 100 Refinement ancient sect's disciples. Originally, after the great battle of the gods 1,000 years ago, the white-clothed youth's blood dyed the starry sky outside the realm, and he died with hatred. The people of the 100 Refinement's ancient sect thought that the nightmare was over. The humiliation and disaster of the past had dissipated with the white-clothed young man, never to return. But now, when the cold and disdainful voice sounded again, Qin Dong, Su Zhang, Gu Shi, Lu Qingsong, and the others were all dazed. It was as if they had returned to the past, where they were surrounded by mountains of corpses and seas of blood. They remembered the fear of being dominated by that young man and that sword. What the hell? Wasn't that person already dead? How could his voice appear again? Inside and outside the palace, the only person who could still maintain her composure was Qianlan. He stared blankly at the palace of Heaven's will, at the terrified Qin Dong, and then at the three elders beside him. He couldn't understand why his master and the three elders would have such a reaction. They seemed to be terrified. But what were they afraid of? Thinking up to this point, Qianlan could not help but look at Yan Shangao behind her, wanting to ask him about it. However, he realized that Yan Shangao was also trembling. His face was ashen, and his expression and eyes were filled with fear. In fact, he seemed to be in a daze, and his mind was not clear. Uncle Yan, what's going on? That voice just now seemed to belong to that bastard Tianqing. Why did you? Yan Shangao stared at the palace of Heaven's will with his eyes wide open. His voice trembled as he roared crazily, "It's him. It's his voice." He's back. This is impossible. He clearly died a long time ago. How can he still be alive? Why didn't I notice it before? Why is it him? Seeing how terrified Yan Shangao was and how he was howling hysterically, Qianlong suddenly understood something. He suddenly remembered. More than 1,100 years ago, he left the 100 Refinements ancient sect under his master's orders to carry out a mission in the secular world. He left for 3 years. When he completed his mission and returned to the 100 Refinements ancient sect, he saw that the entire grotto heaven was in a mess. There were ruins and smoke everywhere. The once glorious 100 Refinements ancient sect was only left with broken walls, countless corpses, and bloodstains. The number of people in the sect had decreased by more than half. The once high-spirited prodigies, the high and mighty elders, and the protectors had all become silent and dejected. Qianlong only knew then. All of this was because of that white-robed young man. As for his title, there were only 2 words. Kenshin. At that moment, Qianlong saw the reactions of Yan Shangao, the 3 elders, and his master, and instantly understood. It's him. It's that Kenshin from back then. No. How is this possible? Qianlong was also dumbfounded. He stared at the palace of heaven's will with his mouth agape. He could not help but exclaim softly. At that moment. In the depths of the palace of heaven's will's main hall, that cold and majestic voice sounded again. If the 100 Refinements ancient sect is still the same as before and only knows how to bully the weak, then there's no need for it to exist. Qin Dong, Su Zhang, Gu Shi, Lu Qingsong. All of you are full of evil. You should atone for your sins with your deaths. As this voice sounded, an invisible pressure and killing intent surged out from the depths of the main hall. It was as if a peak god king had descended from the heavens and earth. That bone-chilling killing intent caused everyone's blood to freeze and their hearts to stop beating. It was as if they were enveloped by death. If they had only heard his voice a moment ago and still had doubts about his identity, they would have found it hard to believe. But at this moment, their last doubts were dispelled. They were absolutely certain. That's right. It was him, Kenshin. That terrifying fellow had returned. At this moment, Qin Dong, Su Zhang, and the others couldn't help but tremble. Their minds were completely swallowed up by fear. Without any hesitation, they instinctively turned around and flew into the distance with ashen faces. Run! Run! Don't kill us! Pretend we never came. Lord Kenshin, spare us! Qin Dong, Su Zhang, and the others all shouted in different voices. But they all fled the palace of heaven's will as fast as they could. In the blink of an eye, they had all fled without a trace. This included Yan Shangao and the terrified Qianlong. Lying in the corner of the main hall, Jiang Tianyi, who was on the brink of unconsciousness, was also stunned. How could this be? Why did young Master Tianqing's voice change? Qin Dong and the people from the 100 Refinements ancient sect didn't even see him. They only heard his voice. Why are they so scared? While he was puzzled, he suddenly remembered that Gu Shi had shouted, Lord Kenshin, spare us. Thinking of this, Jiang Tianyi was stunned. Lord Kenshin. It's really him. He's the benefactor of the Jiang clan. I didn't do anything wrong. Incomparable joy surged into Jiang Tianyi's heart. His vision turned black as he fainted. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3498. Before Jiang Tianyi fainted. The last thing he saw was the white-robed, black-haired Ji Tianqing walking out of the palace. Then, he completely lost consciousness. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing emerged from the darkness in the depths of the palace. With a single step, he crossed 1,000 feet and appeared in the middle of the palace. He glanced at the unconscious Jiang Tiansheng and Jiang Tianyi but didn't try to save them. Instead, he formed a seal with both hands and quickly activated the array under his feet. Swoosh! 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 In an instant, the thousands of divine array patterns on the floor of the palace lit up with a dazzling light. After the divine array was activated, the palace's door closed. In the next moment, the entire palace of heavens will emitted a five-colored divine light. It tore through the sky like a sharp shuttle and flew toward the southwest. Swoosh! Under Ji Tianqing's control, the palace was like a divine ship, and its speed was raised to the maximum. In just a few seconds, the palace flew 100,000 miles and disappeared into the depths of the Sea of Clouds. At this moment, Qin Dong, Su Zhang, Chen Lan, and the others were crazily flying in the sky tens of thousands of miles away. The palace of heavens will flew towards the southwest while they fled towards the southeast. The distance between the two sides had increased a long time ago. Of the 6 people, some were strong, some were weak, some were fast, and some were slow. Naturally, the distance between them widened. The fastest and slowest were separated by 10,000 miles. The slowest was Yan Shangao. The fastest was the left protector, Qin Dong. At this moment, 100 breaths of time had passed, and the tempestuous waves and terror in Qin Dong's heart gradually dispersed. He suddenly woke up and realized that something was wrong, so he immediately stopped. No. That guy died 1,000 years ago. He can't have come back from the dead. We only heard the sound and he didn't appear. Why are we running? After the fear disappeared, Qin Dong's mind was filled with shame and anger. He suddenly felt that he must have been embarrassed and humiliated when he ran away in fear. So, he decided to turn around and go back to check. But as soon as he turned around, he saw second elder Su Zhang rushing towards him. He was still panicking and unconscious. Stop! Qin Dong's face darkened as he reached out to stop Su Zhang. However, Su Zhang did not slow down. He shouted with a face full of fear, "Left protector, run! Run my ass! We've all been deceived!" Qin Dong was filled with shame and indignation. He couldn't help but curse. Su Zhang immediately sobered up. He quickly slowed down and stopped beside Qin Dong. Then, 6th elder Gu Shi and 7th elder Lu Qingsong also flew over like crazy. However, Su Zhang also came back to his senses and joined forces with Qin Dong to stop the crowd. The next time I catch him, I'll definitely hack him into pieces. After a wave of furious curses, everyone fell into vexation and regret. Qin Dong suppressed his anger and took out a divine worship as he spoke to the crowd. That brat definitely fled south. Let's continue chasing south. If I didn't guess wrongly, they'll most likely go to Divine Attraction Grotto Heaven. Everyone felt that it made sense and nodded in agreement. Very soon, the 6 divine kings boarded the divine ship and flew southwest at lightning speed. Inside the divine ship, Qin Dong sat in a dark secret chamber and summoned Chen Lan. Chen Lan, time was tight previously. You only gave a simple report of the situation. Now, Master wants you to explain the cause and process of the matter in detail. Especially that human youth. All the details related to him cannot be left out. Qin Dong's tone was ice-cold, filled with domineering majesty. Chen Lan also knew that the matter was serious and could not help asking, "Master, you suspect that Tianqing is Kenshin? Or is it related to Kenshin?" Qin Dong nodded and said in a grave tone, "Although the dead can't be revived, Kenshin fell in the divine war back then. It's impossible for him to be revived. However, nothing is absolute. Especially a peak divine king like Kenshin who has already touched upon a trace of heavenly Tao's true essence. Therefore, we must be careful about this matter. If he really is Kenshin, we must deal with it with all our might." We must not let the tragedy back then repeat itself. In addition, even if Tianqing is not Kenshin back then, he must have a very deep relationship with Kenshin. He knows the Jiang clan and our sect very well. His voice and aura are exactly the same as Kenshin back then. This is no coincidence. Most importantly, he has the blueprint of the 100 refinement divine hammer in his hands. No matter who he is, we must capture him. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.